Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host, Chet, and today I have Ryan K. Peterson on, a friend of mine for a long time. You've heard him on the podcast many times before. And we're both makeup effects nerds from back in the day. And so we're going to discuss the history of makeup effects to our best recollections. Now, we already did the interview, or we already had the discussion, and we only got up to the 70s. So we decided while we were doing it that it's going to need to be a two-parter, because we got 2.5 hours in. It was 2.5 hour discussion about, and we only got to the 70s. And the 80s is when all the really cool stuff starts happening. So we're going to do 2 parts. This is going to be a 2-parter. So this is part 1. And we definitely left a few out that we will talk about in part 2 before we get into the 80s. We'll talk about the things we left out, because we left out some pretty major ones from the 70s. Just a few, though. So that's coming up. What's been going on with me? I am finishing up some tool poster doodles and trying to get those done so that I can start working on my solo show. Finally, I've got a concept. I've got ideas for paintings. And I need to get cracking on that. I thought that if I start the beginning of next month, like I'm hoping, that'll give me about 5 months to paint for it, which is about 2 months longer than I usually end up getting. Usually I end up painting a show in 3 weeks, which is stupid and crazy. I was hoping for 6 months, but 5 months we'll have to do. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's going to be exciting. I can't wait. It's my favorite part of the whole process is designing the paintings and getting them going and painting them, of course. Anyway, if you want to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/darkartsociety, and you can join for as little as $1. If you join at the $5 or above level, you get a coupon code for, I forget how much, a percentage discount, 20%. I forget what it is, but you get a discount on Skull Shop skulls. Here's a Skull Shop skull. SKULLSHOPPE. They are great, amazing skulls, amazing people, and that's it. Also, hit the like, subscribe buttons on YouTube, please, and whatever platform you're listening to, if you listen. We're trying to get the podcast out to more people, and yeah, so anything you can do like that, share the videos, share the clips. We're doing clips now and shorts. If you could share those around, that would be greatly appreciated, because as you all know, and I'm sure you agree if you're listening, this podcast is a really good podcast, and I just want to get it out to more people because I think it's worth it. That's it. Okay, let's get on with it. Here is me and Ryan K. Peterson talking about the history of makeup effects. Hope you enjoy it. All right, here goes. Hello, Ryan K. Peterson.
Hi, Chet.
How are you?
Doing well.
Except for your little cough.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be really careful. I guess you can always edit if there's like a coughing session.
Yeah, people can deal with it.
But I think
it's real life.
I think I had COVID last month.
Oh, no.
I didn't test it, and I thought it was just a flu, but I don't know. It took forever. I'm still not 100% over it, and I think there was something unusual about it. Like I said, I still have this cough and everything. So
I know I know a bunch of people who are sick, but they don't have COVID, and I know some people have COVID again. But I also know some people that friends of mine that just got sick. Him and his girlfriend just got sick, but it's not COVID, so it's going around.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, something is.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is we're going to talk about the history of makeup effects. And I think that we're both pretty qualified. I was worried, maybe I was thinking like, man, do I really know my makeup effects history? But I think between the two of us, we got it covered. We'll fill in any gaps, because I think we both know it pretty well.
I think so. I was worried too. Prior to like the 70s and stuff, I wasn't sure if I'd have my my history down. My Making a Monster book, you remember that Al Taylor, Sue Roy book? Um,
I'm
had
not sure which one was that.
Dr. Zayas on the cover.
Oh yeah,
Have you
yeah,
Great book.
yeah. It's a great one.
And that has a good kind of history.
Oh, cool.
It goes way back, and I don't have it with me. It's in storage,
Hmm.
but I wish I did because that was pretty kind of hit all the necessary people and landmarks. And I was so happy when I bought that book.
Oh
Did
man,
did you order it or
I
did you
don't.
find it or?
I don't think I ever had that book. I only looked at other people's
Oh
books.
wow.
Yeah. But I had all of the horror books. There was a bunch of horror books in the 70's, horror movies, and I know there was that one prosthetics book that came out. I want to say Lee Bagan,
Oh,
which was like a big one. But the first
Yep.
makeup book for me was that Richard Corson's Stage Makeup. That's the
Yeah.
only one I could find, and that's really limited as far as prosthetics goes. But it has some cool stuff in it, bald caps and kit makeups and stuff like that.
hmm Yeah. And the
I think Beinke had that book. I used to look at
okay.
Jim Beinke's book, the one
I
you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got all those that you mentioned too. You remember Walden Books
Oh yeah.
in the mall? Yeah. So I went yeah, I went there with my parents down to Salt Lake City for a weekend thing and went to Walden Books. That was my routine.
Hmm.
And and then that book was there and it was like everything I wanted in it. And I got it and it was
Wow.
just yeah, I think I was only about 12. So
Hmm.
right at the perfect
Yeah.
time.
You
But
know,
yeah, it had everything. It was so cool.
the other one that was important for me was the Tom Savini one. Because that had a lot of
Absolutely.
step by step stuff in it. That was the first book I saw where it was like it had step by step how to do these effects. Even though
Yep.
a couple of you know, Tom Savini's book turned me off of rubber cement paint for for almost my entire effects career because I maybe I got it wrong, but I think it said to use the universal tint and mix it in the thinner and
Uh-huh.
then mix that into the rubber cement, and it never worked. And so because you're supposed to mix in the rubber cement first and then thin it down to airbrush it, and it never worked for me, so I never used rubber cement paint. So maybe he saved my life.
Yeah.
Or I could have been I may have been doing it wrong. I have to look because I do have my original copy of that book. But it's a
It's
great
such a
book.
it is. It's so good. I was so I'm so grateful that he put that out. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it had plate molds, but it did have the painting and it had R&D foam latex and all of that. I was always intimidated to paint, so I don't think I tried that formula that was in the book. But I did do the R&D foam latex, though. I
Mm-hmm.
did follow that as my first uh yeah,
Yeah, that
foam latex test. So
man,
it was
those
great.
are the days. Remember Dick Smith's discovery if you put some castor oil in the makeup effect in the foam latex, it made the foam latex softer. Do you remember that?
I remember hearing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember
but
using that
I
and I
don't
was
think I
like,
ever did it.
whoa, it's so cool.
Oh,
So nerdy. I love it. Um, uh, hold on one second. I gotta, sorry. So yeah, so I was going to ask first, like, just I know we talked about this on probably a long time ago on your original first episode, but what was the what? How did you get into effects? Basically, what was the first thing? We could talk about how we both sort of got into effects, and then we can go over the history of it.
do you mean when did I first become aware of it?
Yeah, yeah. When it became your thing, you wanted to learn how to
Yeah.
do, and
okay, it was well, I remember just loving monster movies, of course, and King Kong. I was 6, I saw that, and I knew there was something about it, but I was more excited about the concept of King Kong and then
Mm,
Godzilla. And when was it? So I kind of was vaguely aware of Rick Baker from King Kong, but I didn't connect the dots. He was still kind of this uh, abstract person doing this weird stuff. And I even remember, and I think I may have told you this, but there was a picture in Famous Monsters magazine of Rick next to his "It's Alive" baby.
yeah.
And you know how the captions in Famous Monsters are always kind of tongue in cheek,
Hmm.
and the caption was something like "Proud Papa Rick Baker next to his baby," and I thought the baby was real, and I was going, "How could someone be proud of that?" And so I still didn't understand it. And Rick was looking good and proud of his baby, and I wasn't connecting the dots.
Yeah.
But I did start connecting the dots when Fangoria had a photo of Rick applying the American Werewolf in London appliances, and
Hmm.
then they had another article on Wolfen,
Hmm.
and then they had a little blurb on The Howling. And so all three of those kind of werewolfish like movies were coming out at the same time in like the summer or like 81 to 82
Hmm.
or 80 through 82. And so I saw that picture of Rick. I didn't know what he was doing, but I was intrigued by it. And then there's a couple pictures of the Howling stuff, and that looked bizarre and scary.
Yeah.
The Eddie Quist transformation, and both pictures were of Eddie Quist. One was the acid burn, and the other one was just that changeo head.
Hmm.
And I love that changeo
Yeah,
head.
me too.
And I just didn't get it. And I did tell you, we did have this discussion in one of the previous podcasts where a friend of mine, The Howling came out. A friend of mine went and saw it. And he told me about it. Is he excited? And then things were trying to click and process what it is he was saying, what was going on in those images in Fangoria. And then my parents took me to see The Howling.
Mm.
And then that was it. Because once you're exposed to that transformation scene, it's like
Yeah.
that's unbelievable. And then Rob was getting a lot of press. And then I was going, okay, Rick Baker did King Kong. Rick Baker worked on Star Wars. That baby wasn't his baby and it's alive. He created it through clay. And I was like, how did he do that? Why did that look so good? Why? And then it was kind of marveling at how good sculpting can be.
Hmm.
And that was Rick.
Hmm.
Seeing those pictures, Rick, like, wow, people can actually do this.
Yeah.
And so it was that period around 81 where it clicked. And I then, obsessed. And it
Hmm.
was so exciting. And it was exciting in general because the media was covering Rick and Rob and
Hmm.
Dick Smith and Altered States, and all of these things were
Right.
kind of coming together. And so that's when it began. And once I saw The Howling, I couldn't wait to see American Werewolf
Hmm.
because that was
So,
transformation number two.
yeah.
And there was a picture of David Naughton transforming, with his hand when trying to get my
Yeah. Yeah.
film, his hand stretched.
Yeah.
And I was like, that looks so real.
Yeah.
And it really did because, no one does hair better than Rick. And
Right.
and that hair that was on that fake hand was directional.
Hmm.
And it's like no one can really know that much
And that
detail.
that body too, the one that showed
Yeah,
Tom, I think it's Tom Hester sculpting on the body in that Fangoria issue was. I remember
so
thinking, man, it's
good.
so good. And the zombie hand appliances. I don't know. Those were like,
Tom Hester
yeah.
too.
And I remember seeing those and being like, it's so funny how like the weird oddball things stand out for certain people. That hand was like simple hand appliance, nothing crazy, but a
It
zombie
was
hand,
good.
but it was so good. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I remember just being like staring at that picture, totally nerding out on it.
Well, and yeah, Tom Hester, and then that Fangoria came out, the Baker's dozen, half
Yeah,
dozen,
yeah, yeah.
and then it's like, whoa, young people can do this and work for Rick,
Yep.
and I think that hit all of the Monster Kids simultaneously.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
I want to do that, but yeah, those that Tom Hester, those sculptures were amazing.
Yep.
And even Eddie Yang sent me a photo of that stretched hand appliance, from American Werewolf, that was on the auction block or whatever, and
Hmm.
and I think he got it or something, but he sent there was a photo of it, and the sculpting styles have changed a lot,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it was really kind of rough to today's
Right.
standards, but but everything there was necessary,
I know
because when you see it in the film, it doesn't look
I
fake.
know it's
All
so
the
weird.
shadows and the forms were just what they needed to be.
It's weird how there was not that level of detail back then on prosthetic sculptures, but they still looked
They read.
amazing. Even the
Yeah.
Dick Smith stuff,
Hmm.
even the like, there was it's like there wasn't that super hyper poor detail. Maybe there was. Maybe there was on Dick Smith. Let, let's not get too far into the weeds here before we get in, because we'll hit all this stuff as we're going through the
Yes. And
history.
we need to cover Dick and
Yeah. Oh
Little
yeah.
Big Man and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started out. I can't remember. I got a makeup kit from a friend's dad who was a nurse, and they had a trauma kit in a shoebox with a
Mm.
little long pamphlet from Stein's makeup on how to do like broken noses, burns, cuts, and it had like mortician's wax, grease paint, some brushes. It was a little like shoebox kit that they gave to the nurses to do trauma makeups for training.
Hmm.
And I was like into horror movies and Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. So it's like, and I liked that stuff, and I liked monsters. And I think it was like that makeup kit. I started doing burn makeups and stuff. Anything, like broken nose, get a nipple from a baby bottle and stick it up your nose so that it distorts your
Yeah.
nose, things like that. I did all of those things. And, and then Fangoria came out, and I started seeing more makeup effect stuff. And then, I mean, all this stuff it's kind of jumbled for me. It's all around that same time period,
Yes.
12 years old, probably. And,
Hmm.
uh, but I saw it was, for me, it was, The Howling,
Hmm.
but it was also Dawn of the Dead, because that one was just like,
Did you see that in the theater?
yeah, I saw it in the theater.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
my
didn't.
stepdad used to. He that was our thing. We'd go see like either a horror movie or a sci-fi movie. Like he liked sci-fi, I liked horror, but we both liked horror and sci-fi too. And yeah, he took me to see that, and it was just like completely shocking. People don't realize that a movie that gory and bloody and just technically showing that it had never really been done before, except in movies like Blood Feast, these weird grindhouse movies of the like
Hmm.
late 60s and early 70s, Herschel Gordon Lewis. And they were like poorly done with mannequin bodies and fake and like pig guts and stuff. And it was shocking, but it wasn't really realistic. Whereas the Dawn of the Dead stuff was like a lot more realistic looking. And so
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, I have to learn how to do that. And I was also making Super 8 movies around that time. So it was like I was interested in the whole filmmaking process. And but The Howling, after that I saw The Howling, and that was the mind blower. I have to, this is what I want to do with my life, because that transformation sequence was just so, still amazing. I just saw clips of it because I was kind of researching this video, and it's still amazing.
It
It's
is
striking and scary in a way that I don't think
scary.
I haven't seen any other werewolf. Rick's American Werewolf one is amazing. It's just different though. It's in a
Different.
brightly lit room. Um, Even the actor, it's a different looking guy,
Hmm.
and the Robert Picardo, I think his name is, the guy
Hmm.
who played Eddie Quist in The Howling. he's got a different looking face. It's like, it's like with Frankenstein. Part of the reason that makeup's so amazing is because Boris Karloff has this certain face. It's
Yeah.
not just the forehead. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I think that howling transformation is so good for so many reasons, but it's also lit dark with like the slats of light coming in. He's got that he's kind of got a cool face, and the paint shaker stuff that I think
Uh-huh.
we talked about before, where Rob uses the paint shaker to get them all like convulsing and shaking.
Uh-huh.
So disturbing. And the dog smile, which is so creepy. There's just so many cool elements of that just make it stand out to me. Anyway, that was the one that was like, boom, I gotta learn how to do this. And then I just kind of was researching any book I could get my hands on and trying to figure out how to do this stuff.
Did it scare you? Did that or Dawn of the Dead scare you? Or what was your kind of
Yeah,
when you say Dawn of the Dead shocked you? Was it the violence? Was it
it,
the kind of concept? What was
yeah,
it?
yeah. I mean, it was like I was always a zombie kid from Night of the Living Dead. When I was 5 years old, I saw that I used to watch that every time it came on TV,
Oh,
and it totally scared me.
I never saw that till much later.
Oh yeah, so it had that realistic documentary feel to it.
Hmm.
And the funny thing, around that time there was like we were seeing stuff. I remember being that age and seeing like war footage of people getting shot and stuff on TV and being like freaky,
Was that yeah, my mom? Yeah,
like
the Vietnam
Vietnam
War was
War.
the first to be covered on the news.
Yeah,
So you saw some of that footage?
yeah. I remember one
Oh,
time in the first grade, I did a painting of an like a they they gave you poster paints and
yeah.
construction paper, and I did this one painting of a soldier shooting another one, and there was just blood shooting out the back,
Wow.
and I know it was because I'd seen some Vietnam War footage, so I think part of the reason it had such a big impact on me, aside from it being kind of like there'd never really been a movie like that before. Most of those horror movies were kind of goofy and kitschy and fun. And this was like a
Mhm.
serious horror movie that had this documentary, grainy footage, documentary feel to it. And it really kind of seemed more real because I had seen like real stuff like that on the news, I think.
Yeah.
So it really freaked me out. But the overall idea of zombies always stuck in my head as a scary idea. The slow ones, I'm like the traditional slow zombie kind of guy, and so so I found it really, and it scared me in the way that I like to be scared, which is the creepy, scary, not
Mm-hmm.
the jump scare scary. I like the
Hmm.
creepy kind of like stuff
I do
that,
too.
yeah, stuff that gets under your skin. So, but it was like the violence shocked me. That's, in the beginning of the movie, the guy shoots a guy's head and it explodes.
Hmm.
And it's like, you couldn't see that. That was like shocking. It was like so graphic and just,
And the bite, that
yeah,
bite
the bite on the
was
neck and the
Tom
forearm.
Savini did such a good job. That felt real. That
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a bizarre movie. You kind of even though we were young, I think there's a sensibility in George Romero that was more sophisticated than we were probably used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Definitely.
know,
Yeah.
a kind of almost like a maybe even perhaps a liberal uh intellectual
Mm-hmm.
sensibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I loved that. And then just the whole idea of being in Dawn of the Dead taking place inside a mall
Yeah. Yeah.
was so interesting. It's
Yeah.
kind of a fantasy,
Fantasy. Yeah.
and then it goes bad once the zombies break in,
Right.
and it's so good, so
Yeah.
good. But I caught that later. I think I was around 14 when I saw that
Okay.
on video.
I used to go and see it uh at the midnight screen thing as
Oh,
a teenager too, at midnight
oh,
movies, like it used to play every so often, so that was kind of fun. um but it was like the I just wanted to know how they did that, because it was so, like you said, the
mhm,
bites and stuff were so
yeah,
real. And I used to like, I've talked about this before. I used to like to do practical jokes on people when I was a kid and scare people. That was wearing masks and chasing your friends around or jumping out from around a
Hmm.
corner. That was fun to me. And so FX was kind of like that. Like I was also into magic, which is also another super nerdy thing that a lot of FX people, get into at an early age. Um, card tricks, stage magic. And so, the effects thing was kind of like that too, where you're fooling people and you kind of get off on the idea that you're able to do this thing that they don't understand, and it freaks them out, kind of shocks them in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just seemed well suited for me in that way. And then, yeah, and I just devoured every book I could find, and resources were slim back then. Let me tell you, it was like word of mouth. You had to like find people somehow, classified ads in magazines to write a letter to somebody to ask
Hmm.
questions about things. And it was and there was a very few books.
Very few books, and Fangoria and Famous Monsters
Yeah.
were just wonderful. Cinefantastique.
Yeah.
But and you're getting old when you do start to kind of uh I don't know, wax nostalgic about, how it was when you're young and that was maybe better or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think anticipating something is not overrated.
Hmm.
It really makes life exciting. And
Yeah.
this to have to wait for something, to have to wait for the next issue of Fangoria or when a movie's to come out,
Right.
and to have everything on demand, I don't think it's good for us. It's
But it's a double-edged sword. You have all the information at your fingertips, which is amazing.
yeah.
But what you give up for, it's just like with music. You give up having all the music you could ever want online, streaming at your fingertips. Any weird song you're trying to look up, it's there.
Uh-huh.
Versus not having all of that um, at your fingertips, but having the vinyl experience where you go and you buy a record and you sit down and you listen to the music while you read through the liner notes and the
Yes.
lyrics.
Yes.
It's like both of those are really cool. I kind of agree with you, probably because I'm also old, is that I prefer that vinyl experience over having just tons and tons of access to music. And also, like you're saying, having access to all the makeup effects videos you could ever want versus having to wait for magazines to
Mhm.
come. I mean, I kind of agree with you. I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate a
No,
little bit,
I hear you. There's good on both. When videos came out, you did have that was really exciting,
Yeah.
to rent a VCR and go to the video store, and there you did have access to things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's good to both. But you and I are both kind of into Zen,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something very Zen about, like you said, a vinyl record. And I was kind of in between tapes and records and CDs. So I never really started a vinyl collection, but my dad had a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just remember the joy of just, looking at Sergeant Pepper's, opening it up and just staring at the photos while listening to the
Yeah,
music.
yeah. It was like
And
an
so there's,
event, it was like a
yes, it
thing
was
that you did.
it's a moment that's very, your attention's there, and it's a complete experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think that's very, very valuable. And I don't want to be jaded, and I am feeling jaded. I think just because there's so much out there.
Yeah. It's
But
like too much almost.
but yeah, back the Howling, real quick, it did scare me.
Mm-hmm.
I had nightmares about it.
Oh, wow.
And I had a nightmare, well, one nightmare. And
I thought it was creepy too. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I thought it was really scary, definitely.
when you first see the werewolf, when it grabs the Eddie, when Eddie grabs this file from Belinda Blasky's hand, in the doctor's office,
Hmm.
and you get this great shot of it holding just staring at her, and it looks like it's grinning.
Yeah.
That is what I dreamt about. And even when it happened, I went, okay, I'm going to have nightmares about this. And I did about that moment because that werewolf was scary,
Yeah, it was.
and it was weird looking,
I
big
know.
ears, and it was grinning,
The
and it was
eyes were
tall,
freaky. Yeah, it was like,
ratty hair, and it's so, and John Hora, the lighting cinematographer was so good.
hmm
He lit werewolves better than any werewolf's ever been lit.
yeah.
And they just looked scary. Yeah, it was wonderful.
A movie that gave me nightmares aside from The Exorcist. That was a big one that gave me nightmares. Just seeing pictures in famous
Ooh.
monsters, because and they
Oh,
didn't have photos. They only this is right when it came out. They didn't release any photos. They had so famous monsters had someone go in there and then draw them, and they were hand drawn pictures from so they probably, now that my impression as a kid was, oh, he went in a theater and then he drew them after, but
yeah,
probably what happened was they drew the photos,
yeah.
that they weren't releasing to the public. But even from the drawings, I had nightmares and totally like couldn't sleep. But another one that really freaked me out. A lot of the stuff I had nightmares from was weird, crappy 70's
Hmm.
cheap movies that I saw on TV, like Octoman, stuff like that. I saw those like
Hmm.
when I was really young on TV, Night of the Living Dead. But I remember, that movie Horror Express with Telly Savalas. I think it's a Spanish.
Is it an anthology?
No, oh, if you haven't seen it, you gotta
I
see it.
haven't seen
Oh
it.
my god, it's great. They're traveling on a train. It's kind of a zombie movie, but it's also like a missing link type. Like they find this missing
Hmm.
link, and the ice. Is it in ice? Somehow it comes to life and it turns people
Ooh.
into zombies. So it's people trapped on a train with zombies and their eyes glow red, and
Yeah.
it's cool. Telly Savalas, Kojak,
Yeah.
he's in it as like
Of course.
a Russian guy, army leader, or I can't quite remember, but it's cool because the way they do the eyes in it are like prosthetics, and they have actual eyeballs that they make glow red. It's great. It's
I
great.
know the picture. I know what you're talking about
Yeah.
now. I just haven't seen it.
And
But yeah, I love that. I love when the eyes are covered by an
yeah,
appliance.
yeah, yeah,
There's something about it that's very
yeah,
creepy,
yeah.
disturbing.
You have to watch that movie. You have
I
to. I
will.
think it's on even YouTube maybe, but it's a good one. They got miniature shots of the train. It's like
Mm.
it's all overdubbed, so it's got that feeling of those. I love overdubbed and like where they use Foley sound effects and it sounds wrong, kind of, and cheap. I just love that stuff.
I do too.
Peter Cushing's in it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think, right? Isn't Peter Cushing in it?
I,
Oh, Christopher Lee. I think it's Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing are in it.
oh, with Telly Savalas.
Yeah, with Telly Savalas. It's like a
Interesting.
Spanish American production or something. So it's all in English, but so it's got a weird feeling about it. I'm gonna look real quick. Anyway, that one gave me nightmares, big time. Yes, 1972. Um, I
So you were
oh yeah,
four.
Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing.
Huh.
Well, let me see, six,
5, 4.
5 years old.
Yeah.
But no, it came on. I didn't see it when it came out. It came out like on. I had nightmares probably when I was about 10 when I saw it on TV.
Did you see it on like a chiller theater or something that was
Yeah,
on?
something like that.
Tell me about that real quick because we had something like it here in Utah on Saturday nights, and it was really cool. But the horror host kind of genre of that was really big, I think, in LA. So what did you see? What can you remember about
I
that?
think there was one when I was really little named Seymour, and
Okay.
I have just a faint memory of that. But the one that was sort of my go-to was um this one called Fright Night with Grimsley, and that was a local Channel 9 local station, I was a little older, probably like 12 or 13 around that time. I'm not sure, but it was great. And it's he's a real rare one too. It's like cuz I have a book on horror. There's a book about horror hosts and
Oh, I'd
he
like to see that.
yeah, it's pretty cool, but he's mentioned it in a little, but not as much as a lot of the other ones, but he was great. He was super funny. He's very like absurdist humor, really smart. I feel like it's
Uh-huh.
this underrated gem. Like he would do weird break the fourth wall type things in a weird way, like uh do things like there would he'd come to the camera and there would be plastic over it but you couldn't tell and he would like rip it away like he's ripping your TV screen away, stuff like just cool
Yeah,
stuff, and it was funny.
creative.
Yeah, creative. You could tell the guy was totally into it. And I've talked to him. He's on Facebook. He's still alive.
Oh,
Very like Monty Python kind of vibe and horror. And he was like this vampire looking mortician guy.
Grimsley is his
Grimsley,
name.
Fright Night with Grimsley. Yeah,
Oh, that's fantastic. And
it was great.
was that on like Friday evenings or Saturday
I think it was
evenings?
Saturday nights. I
Oh,
think it was so
see we
cool.
oh, I would have loved that. Yeah, Utah didn't have anything that distinctive, but yeah, have you watched Joe Bob Briggs' The Last Drive-In?
I haven't. I know people who love it. Who love
I
it though.
absolutely love it. And I remember watching Joe Bob, his Monster Vision TNT
Mm-hmm.
hosts, and he would host just regular movies sometimes too. And but he was gone for a while, and then on Shudder they brought about this Last Drive-In
Oh,
show where
okay.
he basically is a horror host, and he has a sidekick,
Mm-hmm.
Darcy the Mail Girl, and I think Diana Prince is her name, and but anyway, what I appreciate about Joe Bob is how good his commentaries are. And
Hmm.
he's so smart, kind of like what you're talking about with
Okay.
Grimsley.
All right.
So
I'll watch that. I'll watch
you could
that.
just listen to him
Yeah.
comment, and he comments on other things. And he goes, tangentially, he'll go off topic, and Darcy will have to bring him back. But it's always interesting
Huh.
because he's so smart and he loves the stuff.
I,
And what's so neat about the Last Drive-In is it kind of harkens back to how we were raised, where you don't really, unless you had a TV guide. Well, if you don't have a TV guide, you didn't know what was going to be on that Fright Night, you know,
right.
chiller theater or whatever. And Joe Bob's is the same way. It's live,
Oh,
and then
cool.
you watch it, and you don't know what you're going to see.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a theme, and the last 4 or 5 seasons they have a double feature. It's changed the format a little bit this year, but sometimes it's a double feature, and I think this year it's going to be mainly one. But you don't know what you're going to get, and so just that anticipation is something that's rare.
Yeah.
And he makes it really interesting. And
Hmm.
yeah, effects guys have been on it, and Roger Corman. They did a celebration of Roger Corman on one, and it's I love it. I think you would really enjoy it
Okay.
too.
I'll give it a shot for sure.
I think you should. And Shutter's pretty cheap. It's only
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
$60 a year.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Well worth it.
Shutter's
Yeah.
great. Okay, let's talk about the history of makeup effects. It's been 40 minutes in. We haven't 35 minutes. We haven't talked about the history of makeup effects.
How
We've
far do you want to go?
well, I here's the thing. They say that the first makeup effect was like George Méliès with that man in the moon with the rocket in the eye. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back further, I would say that the stage is kind of where it started. Stage makeup, and
Hmm.
that especially that Grand Guignol French
Yep.
murder theater, which I wish someone would make a documentary about because it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough. That sounds
But that was
amazing,
special makeup effects, right? Because it
right?
was gore and everything else.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
it's exactly what you're talking about, magic and gore and all of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But the I think the first real makeup star was Lon Chaney, right? Wasn't Lon Chaney kind of the first?
Yeah, I think so.
He
Lon
was
Chaney
before,
Sr.,
yeah,
Phantom of the Opera and all that.
and the
Yeah.
Hunchback and all kinds of other weird characters. He's kind of like the first. at least the first like effects. I mean, he was doing stuff just totally revolutionary stuff with, putting wires in his eyelids and to make his eyes go down and in the corners of his mouth and, fish skin to pull his
Yeah.
face all weird. And I mean, he was kind of like tortured himself doing like there's some character he did with a dead eye where he used the skin of an egg,
Yeah.
right? That like skin
Uh-huh.
that's inside an egg. And I forget, I think it might have been Jim Mikey told me he tried to do it and it burned the shit out of his eye. Like totally painful.
Oh, oh, oh no.
So, I mean, he's kind of the first one, don't you
He's
think?
he's got to be because I can't think of anyone preceding him. And
Yeah.
if anything, he was the most. He and his characters are the most memorable
Mm,
and well designed.
yeah.
So yeah, he was probably yeah, I
That's like
think he
because
was
he was in
probably
the
the first.
20s. He was like in the
Okay.
20s, I think, and the late teens, I think. And then we have after that was Jack Pierce
Jack Pierce
in the
and Frankenstein
30s.
and Wolfman. And then yeah, in the 30s we had The Wizard of Oz, didn't we?
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, and that's when they got into
Oh.
prosthetics. Yeah,
Hmm.
with okay, so anyway, so Lon Chaney, he did all these build-up makeups. He did classic theater stuff, bald
Yep.
caps, but like innovative stuff with like hooks and wires and he did, and that was cool that he was an actor that did it on himself, which is totally weird. And that
Uh-huh.
goes back to theater too, because actors used to do their own makeup um, in theater, is from my understanding, back in the day.
Yeah.
And but Jack Pierce was like a Universal Studios guy, right? And he would do these.
Hmm.
He did all these amazing build-up makeups.
Yeah, still build up.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so they're like Lon Chaney out of the kit.
Yep.
For people who don't know the terminology, there were not like the difference between a build-up makeup and a sculpt and a prosthetic makeup that's more modern is that the build-up makeups you do it with materials out of the kit. Like I believe Frankenstein was, I may be wrong, collodion and cotton
I
and
think that is what it was.
built up in
Yep.
layers, which is insane. And whereas later technology, they started figuring out do a live cast, sculpt the thing in clay where you have more control over how it looks, make a mold, and then cast it up in a foam latex, which we'll get to. But we should talk about Jack Pierce, but he's kind of like he's done these amazing iconic makeups that are still popular. Like the Frankenstein's monster is still iconic. Like it's like part of a,
Almost beyond iconic.
yeah,
It's one
it's
of yeah, it
Americana. It's like a
yeah.
classic. I don't know, Americana is the right word, but like Marilyn Monroe, iconic. It's like
Uh-huh.
or Elvis. You know what I mean? It's like or Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse. It's like that level, and it's kind of amazing. What a feat! It's not. It's the makeup. It's not. I don't think it's because of the movie as much as it's because of the makeup design that it's so memorable. I really think that visually, I mean, of course, that was a classic movie. It was very popular. It's a classic, but I don't think that image of Frankenstein's monster would have lasted so long just on the merits of the film alone. I think that it's the design, partially because of the design of that thing, because it's just so. There's something magic about it. It's
Hmm.
amazing. Still, it's still totally cool. It's. I think it's partially because, like I was saying, Boris Karloff's face. He
Hmm.
he had a bridge and he took that out. That's part of why the makeup's so cool, so that his cheek would go way in. That's that one side of his face where it's all sucked in.
Yep.
It's because he pulled his teeth out. He pulled his dentures. He had a partial denture he would pull out. Um, and wax on the lids, I think, right? To
Uh-huh.
make the lids
Uh-huh.
super
Really
heavy,
heavy.
the bolts, and then that weird square head, which does not make logical sense, but it looks cool as hell.
That's the key. I think that square weird head is what is like what really makes that design. Well, in combination with that angularity, in combination with Boris Karloff's great bone structure,
Hmm.
because wasn't Bela Lugosi at one point considered for the role of
Yeah,
Frankenstein, or
he was
he
Frankenstein.
regretted not
Yeah,
taking it
and they did they did a Frankenstein makeup on him for some movie. One of
later?
and it was not. It's like because he's got that round face, it just
Rounder
was
face.
not like it wasn't that great. But the Glenn Close Frankenstein is
Glenn
awesome.
Strange.
Glenn Close
Well, that would be a good
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, the Glenn,
The sequel
the
to Fatal Attraction.
the Glenn Strange makeup is awesome. It's like it kind of is. It's up there, with the
Uh-huh.
Boris Karloff one, I think, and it's because he's got a great face to work with, because he was like a cowboy actor, I think, right?
Huh.
Glenn
I,
Strange.
I I think so.
Before we
But
wait,
oh
one
yeah.
thing we should mention with Lon Chaney before we get off of Lon Chaney. I feel like we didn't give him enough love, but that Phantom of the Opera makeup is also that
It's
iconic, like
yes.
Frankenstein. It's totally iconic and
Yes.
super creepy, and it's probably that really that and Frankenstein's monster or the Karloff one are my two probably favorite horror makeups of all time. Really, I just think those are so
Rightly
amazing.
so.
You know.
Yeah. And that Phantom of the Opera, um, he sells it well. That
Hmm.
that reveal of
Yeah.
just how he moves his mouth and his face, it's
Yeah.
shocking. And there's so much character there. And yeah, Rick Baker just did a mask of it,
Yeah.
a homage, and he's following the forms um, really closely. And there's just something about those forms, the upturned nose, the cheekbones, and it's the
And the
teeth, the way
teeth
that
and yeah.
it's just really, really good, scary, nightmarish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
The
There's
darker.
something about it.
I think another cool thing really about the Karloff Frankenstein's monster and the Phantom are the dark. I know it's simple, but I love the dark circles around the eyes. Like just the
Mm,
black sunken eyes really
hmm
works well. And the other one I had to mention the Lon Chaney makeup because it was so scary to me as a kid is that one about that within that Lost movie. I forget what it's called, but it's the one where it's like long hair. It turns out at the end of the movie, it's a makeup, so it's kind of a bummer. So it's not even a real makeup, but it's the one with the teeth and the eyes that are like that, and
Yeah.
that has all like sharp teeth. All the teeth are sharp.
London
London
After
After
Midnight.
Midnight. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
that movie was
yeah.
it's a lost film, I guess.
No, that okay. That was that was Lon Chaney?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah. And so
that's fantastic.
that's kind of
Yeah.
an amazing makeup and character with the top hat and everything that's kind of
Hmm.
lasted. Okay, anyway, we can go back to Jack Pierce now. I just felt like we had to get that in there.
I
Uh,
don't. I'm glad you did because I'm not sure if I have much to say about Lon Chaney other than just appreciation.
yeah.
I just appreciate his approach to things. But actors doing their own makeups. I did take a makeup course in college, and that was sure fun. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Hmm.
Actors designing their own makeups. Does that done anymore? It's
I don't
a
think
actors are
so.
at the mercy of
It's
someone else,
it's
you
too
know?
specialized. I know that there's certain
Yeah.
actors that are very picky about what their makeup looks like and have more input than others. Like, wasn't Robert De Niro supposed to be a real kind of difficult to work with Dick
Hmm.
Smith? Dick Smith was saying because he was picky about the makeup and he wanted to. I forget which makeup even they were talking about.
Could be. I know Marlon Brando yeah, didn't want to wear any appliances and yeah, yeah.
So I think the big stars kind of have a say in stuff, but I don't think there's any like I said, I think that it was so early on when film was a new thing that it was a carryover from the stage where it was kind of part of the
Mhm.
deal is that you did your own makeup, which is pretty cool. And, if you're designing a character, it makes sense
Totally
that
makes
you would
sense.
do the makeup and everything, So, uh,
Everything would kind of enhance. Yeah, the makeup has to enhance the performance and inform it, and and performance
and if you're the one
has.
performing it,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yes. So there was really something special about Lon Chaney then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he made teeth. He did cool teeth, and he
Mm.
did everything. Um, and then the other ones, I don't know if I forget who did the makeups, but there's some amazing Mr. Hyde makeups. There's that really old one. Oh, there's Nosferatu.
Mm.
That's that's from way back. That's from the 20s, I think, right?
Okay, how much of that was makeup and how much of that was
Yeah,
just odd, the odd features of what's his
I
name?
think it was.
Shrek.
Yeah,
Max Shrek?
yeah, I think it was ears and a dome because there is a really bad edge
Okay.
on. Am pretty sure. So it's how they did it. It's like it's so old and weird though that there's not even. I don't. You never hear it talked about like how they did that makeup. It was like
Yeah.
maybe before Lon Chaney. I don't know. I don't know because I don't know. Anyway,
And the long fingers and
yeah, that's
the
right. That's
fingernail.
right.
It's that is scary.
Yeah,
That Nosferatu character is really scary.
super
I wouldn't want
scary.
to see that in the bedroom at night.
Yeah, and that's
You
another
know,
one that's lasted because it's just so good,
very
you
much.
know.
Hmm.
Um, but there's that really old Mr. Hyde that's kind of got the cone head. Do you know that one? Like
Hmm.
the really weird old one that's amazing and the stringy hair and the long fingers. But the other there's uh I forget the actor's name. There's like two other amazing Mr. Hyde makeups.
Was one of them Spencer Tracy
I
in makeup?
I can't remember, but one of them is super simian looking. I guess they're both very simian. Maybe I'm getting
Oh,
maybe I'm getting the two stages of the same movie confused.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because those are really
I love them
really
both.
creepy and scary.
Hmm.
Um,
Was the Simeon one part of um Abbott and Costello?
I don't know because those
The
had.
monster.
I don't think so because I just watched that
Okay.
recently. Let me see. I think it was like Frederick March. There's
Oh,
one of them.
that sounds right.
We'll get better with our history as we get into the 70s and
Yeah, I
80s.
know. I was a little worried about that.
Yeah, cuz yeah, this one's
That's great.
so creepy, man. And
Yes.
it's like it's simple. It's the teeth, it's the nostrils,
And did he lower the hairline
yeah, the
too?
lower hairline.
Oh,
Um
fantastic.
but I think it's maybe a stage yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the uh but I don't know who did that makeup cuz uh I think that's the I don't know, maybe we should move on. I think the yeah, I mean it's great. It's simple though. It's just teeth and you know.
Teeth can do so much.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And yeah.
Okay, so anyway, okay, so the thing is uh Jack Pierce. So he did The Wolfman, also a build up, right?
Hmm.
I think it was a build up also. He did
Laid the
Franken.
hair, build up, laid the hair down, and I love the hair work on that. He was really good with hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
On a side note, did you see that sculpture that Mitch did of Jack Pierce for Rick, for like a personal for Rick Baker, where it had like it was that picture of him doing the. It was like from a famous photo of him doing the makeup,
I think
and it's
so.
got the
Full
scissors.
sized.
He sculpted the scissors. Yeah, it's like life size. It was such a great sculpture.
I think I remember seeing that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's total side note. Um, But
Well, yeah, there were a lot of really cool sculptures that Mitch would bring in.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And at Rick's shop,
oh
it's just everywhere.
man, yeah.
So okay, but the thing with Jack Pierce is they around. I think it's around the Hunchback of Notre Dame with Charles Lawton. They started
Who
using foam latex
who did
prosthetics.
that makeup?
Okay, I think it was. I gotta look. There was like Gordon Bow, right,
Gordon Bow, yeah, and
and
he
Charles Schramm,
Shram,
and these guys, I think, kind of developed foam latex,
foam latex. Yep.
right? Okay,
Charles Bow, I think, yeah.
and that's another one that Hunchback. Like I didn't really like that Lon Chaney Hunchback makeup very much. I never, even as a kid, I never really liked it. I just didn't think it was as cool as the Charles Lawton version. That one is really
Hmm.
amazing, where it's kind of like the eyes down, but again, it's because he's got that face.
Yeah.
He's got that weird, like he's already got kind of like an upturned nose a bit, and kind of like a round face, and it just totally
Hmm. Rounded
works.
features. The slope is kind of rounded, and then he's got those kind of full lips, kind of that droop downwards.
Yeah,
Everything kind of, yeah, was weighty and round, and it was a distinctive, and yeah, who did
I
that?
know. Okay, I'm trying to look. This is 1939.
Okay.
Let me look. I'm looking on IMDb.
Hmm.
Come on, cast and crew. Come on. Uh, Makeup department. Gordon Bow.
Gordon Bow. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so I think it was around there in the Wizard of Oz where they developed foam latex prosthetics. With the Scarecrow was a foam latex prosthetic, and the witch's nose and stuff. But and
Hmm.
prior to that, it was like out of the kit build up stuff. And Jack Dawn
Oh
did a
yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
stuff. He did the makeup on the Wizard of Oz, I think, didn't he?
yeah, yeah. I think so. Those are fantastic.
I know.
The Scarecrow alone is fantastic, sculpted well,
Yeah, I
and
know,
just
right?
and everything about it's good. Yeah, yeah. The Wizard of Oz was okay. I took some notes about like moments where like things were unprecedentedly good,
Mm-hmm.
and The Wizard of Oz is one of those.
Definitely.
Frankenstein, definitely one of those. But The Wizard of Oz, um, it worked on every level, and it was surreal and dreamy, and I think it kind of was, yeah, it just kind of transcended and just one of those almost perfect movies.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It's an
even the
amazing movie.
tornado effects, even the practical effects
Right.
were like, it has no business being as good as it
I
is,
know,
really.
and I don't even know what year that movie. It's in the 30s.
Got
It's
to
some.
be in the 30s, but yeah, and those makeups are so good, and even the wizard makeup with the kind of rounded cheeks and
Yep.
perfect, just
1930,
perfect.
1939.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So I guess the 30s was like a big,
Big year for that
yeah,
stuff. Everything.
changing into foam latex prosthetics from out of kit makeups and stuff. Um,
And wasn't that something that Jack Pierce was had a difficult
that's right. Yeah.
adapting to,
Yeah.
which is sad.
Apparently he was. I don't know if drummed out of the industry is the right way to put it, or fired, or what, but he was he wouldn't move on to sculpting and doing foam latex prosthetics. He wanted to keep doing it the old way, which is the build up way. Um, so
That scares me. That scares me because there's an example right there of not adapting to the
yeah,
times.
but why is that scary though? Because you've adapted
Because
to
I don't want to adapt to AI or
yeah,
technology.
but you've adapted to ZBrush and digital
Yeah,
sculpting and stuff. So it's like as you're on a need to know basis if you're what you're doing, because like think about ZBrush sculpting. It's cool enough to where you did it and learned it, and it's
that's
still
true.
fun and you're still sculpting.
Hmm.
I mean, if it's something to where you're at a point where you're just like typing something in and it's spitting something out,
I don't want
you
to do
wouldn't
that.
even want to
Yeah.
do that. So,
I don't even
but if
want to do that. So Jack Pierce didn't want to learn these new things because he was so good at just being resourceful out of the kit,
but
kind
yeah,
of artist.
but he was also great. I mean, he made these iconic makeups, so he must have had an eye for really cool,
Hmm.
something that looks really good, which is a
Hmm.
big part of it. Because the Wolfman is also very iconic, super
Yeah.
iconic. And again, yeah, great hair work on that too. You know,
Do
the
you know? Oh,
oh,
go ahead. Yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention about the Frankenstein makeup is the hair. It
Oh,
doesn't really
yeah.
get talked about, but that hair, I think that lends a lot of realism to that makeup because the hair looks super real. The hair that's kind of hanging over the
Yeah.
top, it's just there's something about the hair that it doesn't look fake. It looks.
What did he do? Just it was just like a thin, almost like a toupee thing that just was flattened that kept the shape of the squarish, head, and
I guess yeah, it must be. It
it,
must have been a
it was
wig.
minimal,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but
it
it kind of
does.
hangs over the edge, and also okay. What were you gonna say? Because one thing I thought of something we need to talk about.
Yeah. We're sculptors, so we're biased towards sculpting, but there's something to be said about designing a look of something sans sculpting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, which is basically what Lon Chaney and Jack Pierce were doing. And I love the quality of it. There's kind of an organic um, a feel to it where, if sculpting, even really good sculptures, you you can still kind of read that it's a sculpture. And but to get the kind of naturalism of something that's being built up, or a Wolfman makeup that didn't rely on changing so much of the bone structure, but instead beautifully laid hair
Mm-hmm.
and a minimal nose and the teeth. But the hair is like 80% of the whole look.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's one thing where I feel like hair isn't utilized as much today because of the strength of the sculptors in the industry.
Yeah. That's
Whereas
true.
I
Mm-hmm.
love seeing, I mean, have you seen those individuals that have a kind of a disorder where they're covered with hair, like
Mm-hmm.
Jojo the dog face boy or something?
Yeah.
And I think there were these two brothers from South America or something that were part of the circus who had that same thing, but it was short, curly, dark hair, and they had dark brown eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and just that alone
Right.
was like very a powerful look,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
didn't rely upon sculpting. Just the hair alone is unusual enough that it was powerful, and I sometimes feel like people shy away from hair now and don't fully utilize its power.
Mm-hmm.
And even like Bigfoot makeups and costumes, a lot of
Right.
times they shy away from having the hair almost, cover most of the prosthetics.
Right.
And I feel like I want to see the hair. I mean, if
Yeah.
even if it's on top of really cool, War of the Gargantua type of bone
Well, the
structure,
thing,
I
yeah,
want to see the hair.
the thing about hair is like if it's done well, it looks super real, and if it's not done well, it looks super bad and
Yeah,
fake.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
it is amazing when you look at um the Wolfman, especially how good he was at laying hair. There's really
Uh-huh.
an art to laying hair properly in layers, and
Yeah, it
it's
looks so good.
yeah,
And
amazing.
and and of course, with foam latex appliances, he's got to go in and sculpt these things, and he's got to pivot and rethink uh, about emphasizing these appliances. And so it's like, maybe he would get feedback from producers saying, we don't want you to cover these appliances, this new state-of-the-art material with hair. Let's just focus on the
Hmm.
appliances. And, maybe something was lost, especially his ability to design with hair. And so, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, but think about though, like out of build-up makeups. There's an element to sculpture in those, especially when you're using mortician's wax and stuff, though. You are kind of
absolutely.
sculpting on your face. It's just like
Mhm.
the option to do a fully covered face isn't there really without of out of I mean, I guess yeah, I mean the Wolfman's a good example of you can do that, but you you have less options, so you have to be more creative with what little things you can do. You know what
Yes.
I mean? So
teeth, eyes,
Right.
hair. Yeah, these focal points on the face. It's that's and
And a lot of times limitations are what make you come up with a really cool idea you wouldn't have come up with
exactly.
anyway, you know? Um,
Hmm.
I do one thing we should mention about the Frankenstein makeup is, or Frankenstein's monster. I'm trying to correct myself because I know people,
That
yeah.
confused me as a kid. It's like, wait a minute, that's Frankenstein.
No,
Well,
the
I don't know.
doctor was
That's just
Frankenstein.
added words. Just that's just Frankenstein. Forget
uh,
about the doctor,
yeah, yeah, it doesn't
scientist,
matter.
whatever.
Um, the funny thing is his justification for the flat head was like the idea that he would pop the head open to put the brain in and then put it back down. And it's
Yeah.
like, why would that make the head square? It doesn't make sense, you know?
Uh-huh.
And but it doesn't matter because it looks so damn good.
Yep.
I still paint square headed dudes all the time.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
like
you do.
part of my thing because it was because of that. You know, it was such an
Uh-huh.
influence. I just think it looks so amazing. But it's so funny how it doesn't really
It,
make sense.
it was a simple starting point to add a design element that was
Right.
really cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, the brain has to come out, come out and come back in. So that gives me liberty to change to play with the shape of the head.
Right.
And that was enough reason to go, let's flatten it.
Yeah.
And thank God he did.
I know.
Wow.
I love it. It's so good. Okay. So, of course, you got to mention Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is in the 50s, right? I think that's we got The Mummy, which is also, The Mummy was
Mm-hmm.
another amazing one. Again,
Jack Pierce again.
Jack Pierce
Yeah.
and also Boris Karloff. So
Yeah.
it's like that face. I think a lot
That
of,
bone structure, man.
yeah,
It is.
he had an amazing face for that. But that makeup, the Mummy still holds up. Still looks
Hmm.
amazing. It looks great. It's so weird. It's weird how
It's just a collodion makeup, isn't it? Just
I think so, or
it's not a flexible, non-flexible collodion, or yeah.
yeah, something
Right.
like
Yeah, the stretch or late, yeah, the stretch, yeah,
yeah,
stipple.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's just the old age stipple, and
right, right.
but it works.
Yeah, it looks so good. It's just funny that again we're gonna sound like old men, but I've been watching a lot of old movies lately. For some reason, I hit a certain age and I really appreciate
Hmm.
old movies, like movies from the 40s and film noir and stuff. I just didn't like them. I was like probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast. I don't like black and white movies. That's how it used to be when I was younger. I just
Hmm.
didn't, I like a color movie and it's so simplistic and kind of dumb, but something happened at a certain age and now it's like I like these old movies, these old black and white movies. I like the old Technicolor movies too. They're really cool. There's I don't it's like it's like when you get older you like the taste of wine. It's just things just
Yeah,
change in your brain, um
yeah,
but it's just interesting to look back on these movies like The Wizard of Oz and like The Mummy, Frankenstein, and just that they still look, there's movies from makeups from like the 70s that don't hold up nowadays, but these movies in the 30s and 40s still look like totally hold up, to modern standards. I think a lot of them do. Um,
I need to revisit some of these, and I think you're wise to wait till the moment's right. It's like, okay, I'm ready.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't even think I've seen The Mummy in its entirety, and I'm not quite there. I
Want
don't know what
to?
it is. I don't want to yet.
Yeah, you
Um,
gotta. I went through a period where I watched a bunch of those old Universal movies. Finally, um,
yeah.
yeah, it hits everybody at a different time. But now I'm doing like anything old, like for the writing. I really like the writing. It's like back then they weren't just crapping stuff out. It's like the writing had to be good, and they're
Yeah.
big productions.
Yeah.
Nowadays there's just like there's so much. I don't know. There's amazing stuff now too. But so anyway, but the Creature from the Black Lagoon also groundbreaking. Um, What's her name?
Millicent Patrick.
Millicent Patrick designed it. Designed by a woman.
Isn't that beautiful? Designed by one of the best, most iconic creature designs was designed by Millicent Patrick, a woman,
And what?
and she was kind of pushed out of the industry,
Yeah.
and
Wasn't it like a one of the Westmores that took credit for it, like Bud Westmore or
Bud
something?
Westmore. Oh my hell. Yeah, but the people that need to know, the people we know who did it. We know who was
Yeah.
responsible. And we
That's how it
yeah.
was those days. It's like make head of the makeup department got the
Yeah, that's
credit.
right.
It's just and especially if
So
you're
she,
a woman, you
oh
know.
man.
But
And she wasn't she like a Disney designer or animator? She had a
I'm not
like a
sure.
classical illustration, I think, background.
Okay.
And so she brought that kind of trained, I don't know, just skill
Yeah,
to it that was just it yeah.
it's one of the best. I think it's really one of the best. If you think about it, compared to all the classic horror, Universal horror monsters, it's probably the best one overall. If you think about it, because it's a head to toe thing.
Hmm.
It's a suit, and it's like how hard it is to make a good monster suit. Frankenstein was more like costuming was part of it.
Yeah.
The short sleeves and the big boots. This was like a naked creature from the head to toe, and the design, it was form fitting. It's so,
It was it was elegant.
yeah,
Had
elegant.
elegant lines and flows, and I think that's where maybe Millicent really brought something, a feminine perspective to it, a
Yeah,
beautiful kind of creature design.
yeah. And again, that one still holds up too. It's
Totally.
amazing. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
still, people are still making model kits and stuff
Hmm.
of it, and yeah, amazing. Again, it's like that has endured. Like people don't think of like the lead in Creature from the Black Lagoon, or they think of the creature because it was
Yeah.
so well designed.
Yeah.
It's not like the movie was that great. It's like I think, I mean, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I'm sure it's a great movie, but the creature is the standout from that, the design, the creature design.
And it works well under the water. I
Yeah.
mean, just there's those shots of just the actors swimming with that on, and it works, and it's just yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not ugly really
Yeah.
at all. It's
And
charismatic.
it's not dumb looking. Like a lot of fish
No.
are kind of goofy looking. It's not goofy
Yeah.
looking. It looks really just cool and
Yeah.
scary and elegant. You probably didn't get another creature that cool in that way until like Alien.
Hmm.
It's the same kind of feeling. It's like elegant and thin and just
You're right.
different.
You're right.
Anyway, so okay, so what happened in the 50s? We had like all kinds of, it's almost like around that time was a bunch of lame kids sci-fi and horror movies that was kind of dumb, right? So there
So
wasn't like an amazing makeup innovations in the 50s as far as I
no,
know.
it was kind of the post atomic period. So there was radiation
Right.
freak and abominations of nature that came out. So it's like the creatures became larger in scale.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
them or whatever. And so it was almost like an animatronic phase or a puppetry phase. The monsters uh, 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 evolved past a human performer in them, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's a
God.
weird period
Yeah, there's the
where
Godzilla movies and stuff. I mean, those are kind of like makeup effects, but they are a little more like, there's that weird area where it's more costuming than, there
yeah.
is an overlap with costuming and makeup effects. But back then it seemed like almost like more prop making and costume
Hmm.
making in a way, you know?
What's his name? Is it Paul Blaisdell? Is that the
Uh-huh. Oh
name?
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was doing, that's kind of what I was picturing,
Right.
doing some of those like almost like animatronic creatures, you know,
Yeah, weird. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there was a lot of that.
and
Uh,
some makeups and some like costumes, like you said, some yeah,
yeah, but there wasn't like a lot of
makeups.
makeups of note that I can think of. There was some cool stuff, but nothing like iconic like like from the Universal monsters or anything.
No, you're right. Was Britain doing something? When did the Hammer films
Oh
start?
yeah, those started in the 60s, I think.
Okay,
I
okay. So
think.
yeah, the 50s was kind of a
Yeah,
little
more.
bit of a dearth of makeup effects at the time.
Yeah, Paul
Yeah.
Blaisdell though is. I'm glad you brought him up because he's probably the most notable. Unless we're both totally spacing out something.
Oh, I'm sure we
That's.
are. I'm sure I am.
I mean,
Yeah.
because there was like, I know there was that cool makeup of the guy, the giant guy with the skull, exposed
Uh-huh.
skull. I can't remember the movie.
Yep.
Uh, but that wasn't like you don't know who did the makeup really. That wasn't that much of a groundbreaking makeup. It was just
Oh,
kind of a
what
cool
about
makeup.
the Monster on Campus? Remember that one? Was
Yeah,
it called Monster on Campus?
I
It was
think
kind of like this
so.
Neanderthal kind of creature. That scared me.
I can't
And
think of
that
what it
was,
looks like.
I think maybe that was the 50s.
Yeah,
And then there was I Was a Teenage
yeah,
Werewolf,
yeah.
Michael
And
Landon.
and
So there were,
I was a teenage Frankenstein. But those were like that's what I'm saying is those were kind of like cheap, low
yeah,
budget kid. Back then it was like horror movies in that era were for kids, like kids matinee
yeah,
films. Um, I gotta see what that looks like. Monster on Campus now.
it was cool looking. That was one of the science fiction theater movies on a Saturday afternoon that I watched.
1958.
58. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So,
He had like this plaid shirt on, so, lumberjack shirt on. Was that
sh-
right?
I don't. It's not. I'm not really getting any pictures. Okay. I don't want to get
Okay.
distracted. So I guess let's go into the 60s.
Okay.
Things start getting. Now we're gonna get into the. We're almost to the era where we really know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um. So I mean, the big innovation in the 60s. We've got Dick Smith, who is like the godfather of modern makeup effects, starting, I think, in the 40s and 50s, or was it
So
just
he
in
was
the
working for
50s?
NBC, and he was like the NBC makeup man. And what was the
Oh,
Jonathan Frid
Dark Shadows.
Dark
Yeah, he did
Shadows?
some good kind of
And was that in the
preliminary.
60s?
Yeah, that was in the 60s. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and
Uh,
okay, the 60s. So we can't forget about Little Big Man, which I
Yes,
think is
that
the end.
was
But
probably the.
prior to that,
Okay.
yeah, prior to that, what else was there? So Dick Smith, Stuart Freeborn was doing some
Oh,
cool stuff.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stanley Kubrick, he was doing stuff for Stanley Kubrick. So there was a 2001.
Yeah, with
There
the.
was a Doctor Strangelove, those great makeups on Peter Sellers.
That's true. Yep.
And so yeah, so Stuart Freeborn was doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
And
he was doing he did the again that was like the crossover of costuming and animatronics with
yeah,
the cavemen
Dawn of
dudes.
Man sequence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in 2001. That was 60, wasn't that 69, I
I
think.
think so. And what about John Chambers? So was
Oh,
John Chambers
Planet of
doing
the
anything
Apes.
out of? Oh yeah, but that
That was
that was
70s.
60s. That was 60s. So that was
Okay.
around 67 or 8.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. Planet of the Apes was groundbreaking and
Yes.
Little Big Man. But prior to that, was Phil Leakey a British effects guy? It was Hammer. Some of the
Yeah,
Hammer movies were starting to come out, I think, in the 60s.
like the I
So
forget the name of those movies. This that weird name for those science fiction movies.
there was like the
Quatermass.
Quartermass in the Pit, Quatermass in the Pit.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was yeah, the
That
there was
weird.
some cool
There's
stuff.
that weird makeup where the guy is like this. It's like a big mouth. You know the makeup where it's like a big eye and then the mouth
I
goes out
do.
like a flower, kind of.
Was that a British
I think that was
production?
British. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then there was the Oliver Reed werewolf. So there was
that's true.
British did their versions of werewolves
That's
and
true. That's
which were
true.
great.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So Phil Leakey, was he a British guy?
I
And
think so.
Yeah, and so Stuart Freeborn, and so there was a lot of good stuff happening in Europe at the time,
Hmm.
and yeah.
But the two I think most groundbreaking things that happened in the '60s were Dick Smith with Little Big Man and John Chambers with Planet of the Apes. I think,
Mhm.
unless we're missing something, but Dick Smith had done an age. He'd done some age makeups for different TV things, and
Hmm.
he did a full face old age makeup on Jonathan Frid in
Hmm.
Dark Shadows.
Kind of a precursor to the Little Big Man makeup.
Right, apparently the issue of face masks and foam is that they shrink. So he devised this kind of ingenious way of breaking up a prosthetic sculpture to do overlapping appliances, and so he did Dustin Hoffman as what, the 120-year-old man or something.
Okay, so yeah, so what happened, and you know this, I'm sure, but he was in a conversation with Stuart Freeborn because there was an old age makeup at the end of 2001.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And he noticed that it wasn't just a bald cap on the actor, I forgot his name, but uh, it had sculpted veins. So
Yeah, that was
Dick
that.
asked,
Yep.
or either asked Stuart Freeborn, or was able to conclude that a different process was at work here, and he took it where it needed to go and innovated the whole overlapping appliances, and it's hard to kind of overestimate how groundbreaking and innovative that was.
So
And
Stuart Freeborn did
to
section
that,
appliances on that old age makeup.
no, he had a he, I guess he did. So
Hmm.
he had like a facial makeup, probably a one piece, and then he added a bald cap,
Okay.
not a bald cap, but a
Sculpted bald head.
sculpted bald head. And so that's what caught the attention of Dick Smith, who then just took it and ran with it.
Right.
And Little Big Man's another one of those landmarks where we jump considerably in
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
Um, and let's talk about texture a little bit. I'm biased towards Dick's approach for that makeup, whereas he never really stopped and said, "Okay, now I'm in the texture stage of this," and you know, dot 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 whatever. Everything was sculpted. Even the detail was like it was layered. You know, the he what is I don't he even went past the tertiary stage. There was another stage where it was just really fine little sculptures that he
Hmm.
brushed down. And I still think that makeup has some of the best sculpting I've ever seen on a makeup.
Have you? Yeah. I would stare at that thing
It's amazing. It's
endlessly.
beautiful. I did too.
So,
Yeah.
have you ever seen it in person?
Yes.
Because I
I
haven't.
saw
I don't remember.
I saw the back of the head and neck scope. Kazu had that and in his office, and I went and stared at it. And
How was it compared
it's
to what?
very sculptural. It's very
How
sculptural.
was the detail?
Uh
It wasn't to the same level of detail that we
no,
would do at
and no, and
Rick's, right?
if he did put any like non-sculpted detail, it might have been some poor texture of a texture stamp,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't necessary
Right.
because the forms had so much character to it.
Yeah, I remember seeing the back of the head appliance and seeing the shape of the skull. I'd
Yeah,
never seen
beautiful.
something refined so well
Hmm.
for like a back of something that no one would see. I remember thinking, man, that back of the head appliance looks really real, you know? But let me tell you something about that makeup. Mitch Devane, who we all know and love, he didn't like that makeup. Like he
Really
said the sculpture, he didn't think it looked realistic enough. He said it looked
interesting.
he said it was too I think he said it was like something about the sculpture he was saying didn't like it, it was overdone or something, or it was, he said some of the wrinkles were weird. I remember him telling me that, which I was like, that's the first person I ever heard criticize that makeup because it's like kind of
You know,
the gold
I could believe
standard.
that. Yeah, I think there are some embellishments there. I think some of maybe the wrinkles on the side of the crow's feet and stuff might have been a little bit stylized, but oh, that's I'll have to talk to Mitch about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, curious to hear what he says. But you know, Mitch, he's
Well,
kind he'll talk shit about anything.
but it could, he he knows what he
Yeah.
certainly knows his business. So I want to know what he's talking about. It's slightly a heightened piece of work,
Hmm.
sculpture, design, and but you're talking about the back of the head. It's the first time I think there was a thought out layering of prioritized forms.
Mm. Yeah.
So you could see the skull underneath the skin and the veins and the moles
Hmm.
just by looking at the back of the head.
Hmm.
And in the front, you could see the bone structure underneath, and then the drooping flesh, and then the almost like the stippled, wrinkled, finer details. And so he layered it.
Right.
And that's what makes that sculpture so beautiful. And it's a bit busy,
Hmm.
but there's a couple shots in the movie where it's stunning.
Yeah.
It's like there's I think it was even I can't remember, but he had lenses in there, so it
Yeah.
looked that made his eyes look all cataracty and cloudy,
And
milky,
and that's
and that
yeah.
really helped.
That's huge. That's huge for old
Mhm.
age makeups is contact lenses. That
It is.
I've seen makeups that were like the makeup's good, but the eyes need to be kind of fucked up in order
Hmm.
for it's because the eyes are kind of a dead giveaway, you know.
Yeah, totally,
Um,
totally.
and it's the first thing you kind of look at too. Um, just for I'm assuming everybody knows everything about makeup effects that's listening, but there's probably people who don't really know about how it's made. So I just real quickly, I wanted to just say, prosthetics. I mentioned earlier the quick, simple explanation: a life cast is made, a mold of someone's face. They're it's reproduced in plaster. It's filled. The mold is filled with plaster or some kind of stone, or now all kinds of materials. But um, then a sculpture is sculpted over the plaster face of the actor or actress or actor, and um, and then that is molded, opened up, clay is cleaned out, it's put back together. Foam latex, which is like the stuff in a couch, or foam sponges, is a liquid foamy material that's injected into the mold and then baked, and then those are your pieces that are glued on the face. Just like the quick overview, right? That's kind of basically it.
Yeah, the foam latex fills the space that the clay used to in the mold.
Right.
So it replaces the clay. And yeah, and oftentimes it was just one piece appliances
Right. And it shrinks. Foam latex
and it
shrinks.
shrinks.
So
Mhm.
Dick Smith developed this way of coating the plaster um uh bust with a dental separator material called owl coat, I believe.
Yep.
And sculpted his pieces on that and cut them into sections.
He roughed out the sculpture to
Right.
say 90%, 85% there. Then you continue. He's cut it
Yeah, he'd
and
make cuts where he wanted the different pieces to overlap, and then soaked it in water, and the dental separator made the pieces come off in clay. And then he'd take these clay pieces and put them on, so convoluted, put them on sections of the life cast that have been invested in a base. So it's like there would just be a forehead in stone, and then he would lay the clay pieces, or a cheek or a chin, and uh, and he would kind of like sculpt them to overlap on each other. And that was the big innovation, because before it was like if you wanted an old person's makeup, it would be the whole face.
the
And
Jonathan Frid,
yeah,
yeah,
and which is
Dark
difficult to glue
Shadows
down
makeup.
because the foam shrinks. So his big innovation was these overlapping makeups. And then I remember on the craft, we did a makeup that didn't get used for the movie. I did the makeup, and I was
I
so
remember I was in the shop when you sculpted that.
oh, okay, and it was like totally overdone. Now that I look back at it, it
Oh,
was
I
a good
liked it.
makeup, but it was like super wrinkly. It's like
I liked
you
it.
could tell that I was waiting all these years to do it because I like kind of overdid it on the sculpture. But
Everyone wants to do their
I know,
version
I
of
know.
the little big man makeup. And
And it was like, and Darkman was multi-layered, and we overdid it as well. Like we had a separate. It's like it could have been with Darkman. It was a neck piece. We should get into that later. But I remember there was like too many. It was overly broken down, just because everyone
mm,
was going crazy. And it's like, okay, you could probably get away with less pieces, and
yeah,
it's a little easier to work with. But so that was the big makeup innovation, and then it was around that time I think Rick Baker started working with Dick too, right? Didn't he kind of? I think he assisted him on Little Big Man a little bit. I'm
Fred Reardon
99%
did.
sure of that.
I don't know if Rick did. He might have, but I know Craig Reardon did.
Oh, really? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
and
Rick was like a kid because I know he
yeah,
helped on The Exorcist,
he helped on The
but I'm
Exorcist, and
pretty
he was
sure he
pretty
helped
young
on
on
Little.
that, and that was 72.
I'm, I'm pretty sure he
So
did, but I might be wrong. I might be wrong about that, but
I could be wrong too.
uh,
Yeah.
maybe yeah, I could be wrong. Anyway, so that was like the big innovation, like you were saying, 2001, the Stuart Freeborn ape
Uh-huh.
apes were mechanical heads, and the big innovation with those animatronic masks that the actors saw through when they opened
hmm
their mouths. There was an automatic mechanism that made the lips snarl, so it wasn't like a radio control thing. It was just like when the mouth
Yeah.
opened, it snarled automatically, which was I don't think it
Really
ever been
cool.
done before, which is super cool. And then Planet of the Apes was the other huge
Chet, real quick before we
innovation.
get to
Okay.
Planet of the Apes, I just want to emphasize, can you imagine how exciting it was for Dick to apply that makeup for the first time?
I know,
And
right?
and to see how it's almost like it probably surpassed his expectations because it he all right. This is going to sound kind of weird and mystical, but I know you don't mind.
No,
Quality gets you closer to God.
right. Yeah.
Quality, there's something where you're able to transcend this mortal vehicle, something where if you put in the time, uh, aspiring to quality, you make leaps and jumps. To it's literally like it feels like you're going higher and
Yeah, it's
higher
like
and
a
higher,
transcend
close.
it becomes a
It's
transcendent
it's a
experience.
transcendent thing, and I can't think of any. Can it had to have felt so good for Dick Smith to put that on because he had to go. He had to know at that point that he's special,
Yeah. Yeah.
that something really special occurred
Yeah, and
because it's
what a time to, I mean, it's people don't realize it's like to come up with that idea of using a dental separator. All the whole thing is so weird,
yeah.
and it's like bringing all the disparate elements together from different industries to figure out, he was really really pretty incredible guy when it came to like innovating this stuff,
Yeah.
because it's just like back, think in the 60s. In the 60s, thinking about how to do these things was just like nobody had done them before, and just what a smart guy, a smart dude.
And yeah,
I
smart, gifted, brilliant,
Yeah, great eye,
and he was close to the muse
close to God.
because that they collaborated,
Right.
if anything, on that Little Big Men makeup because it still
Well,
worked.
yeah, and all, but the fact, the proof is all of his work throughout the years was all amazing.
hmm
I don't think there's any bad Dick Smith makeups. I mean, stuff. I can't think of any off the top of my
I,
head.
you know what? And people are going to really despise me for saying this. I'm critical of one makeup,
Okay.
and and I feel like it's the old age hunger makeup on David Bowie.
Really? I think that one's
I
amazing.
know everyone loves it.
Shame.
And okay, okay,
Wait, wait,
let me
wait, wait,
just
wait. Before we get onto that, we forgot one of the big innovations of the Little Big Man makeup that didn't make it to screen, and that was
yes,
the
the wrinkled
the
eyelids.
eyelids that,
Yeah.
you know, generally, in foam latex, you would blend off around the eye, and old people have this sagging, crepey skin above their eyes, and Dick figured out a way to do these super thin accordion like baggy eyes that glued to the eyelid to where when he blinked, you would see the makeup, the eyelids, kind of like these wrinkly eyelids, blink with it. And that had never been done before, and they didn't shoot it, or they edited it out, any blink shots, which is kind of
So
exciting.
glad you mentioned that because he addressed a part of the face that I think is very, very, very important. And that hood that goes above the eye
Mm,
is very distinctive on some actors, less so on others, but it's very, very important. And there's been a trend lately where people remove that fold. And so what happens is more of their eyelids are exposed.
mm-hmm.
And Robert Redford did this. And I could tell immediately when he did it because he changed something he threw out the balance of all of his features because he had a kind of that heavy eyelid that came down to where that hood where you were less likely to see the eyelid,
Mm-hmm.
the upper eyelid. And what happens is it can provide, and Paul Newman has this too. Paul Newman has a very distinctive one. It's very heavy, and what happens is it provides a very clean shadow, a very clean line
Right.
above the eye, the pupil and the iris, and that can be a very attractive feature because when we sculpt things, line and direction's very important, and so and it's just very important. And oftentimes, very attractive people will have clean lines that provide very clean shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened with Robert Redford, he lost his shadow because he removed that hood. And and I think he
With
thought he
what?
could fool people.
With cosmetic surgery, you mean?
Yes, they
Oh
go
wow.
in and they simply remove the tissue.
Oh wow.
And I think maybe some people do it because they can't see because maybe it gets in
Mm-hmm.
their eyes. But I think some plastic surgeons, and man, I have a real bone to pick with a lot of plastic surgeons in Los Angeles. I want to sit down with them and say, "Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
You're not a good enough sculptor to do this to these poor people. So why are you selling this?" And because they're ruining faces. And so it was a trend. So uh, Steve Martin had it done.
Oh
Matt
wow.
Damon just had it done.
Really?
Um, the mayor of Salt Lake, Rocky Anderson, had it done. I can always pick it out because it's like, whoop, they got rid of the
I
eye
know.
hood. And it's like, why did you do that?
I
And Robert Redford diminished his attractiveness because he removed it. And it kind of made him look, and I love Robert Redford. I don't mean to criticize it, but I don't think they really know what they're doing.
yeah.
They just think, oh, maybe this is a good idea. And it's like, no, it's not a good idea because there's more at play than just that part of your face.
Right.
Everything works in harmony. And especially if it's distinctive, like it is with, say, Robert Redford, and especially Paul Newman. Um, you leave it alone or you're going to remove the quality that makes you
Right.
Paul Newman. And so, yeah, that's a little bone I have to pick with plastic surgeons and people. I like, do not mess with that part of the face. And so for Dick Smith to put such attention into that folding hood was brilliant.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was brilliant.
And you
And it
do.
is a shame that you don't see it
I
in the
know,
damn
but you
movie.
see it that hunger makeup has it. I think you see it blink once or twice, and you do see
Oh,
the
good. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
let me just say while we're on the hunger,
Okay.
because I don't like criticizing Dick Smith, and even that makeup is still beautiful. But if you look at the sculpting, it's a step. It's not as good as I feel, the Little Big Man makeup. It's the some of the forms of the forehead wrinkles don't mesh quite as well. And I think even he said that he used a kind of hydrocal or ultracal that wasn't very good, and he lost some detail.
Oh, wow.
And so there's something about that final old age makeup where it's and there's some folds, the lower eyelid eye bags. It's kind of an interesting
Yeah.
approach, but they droop over the zygomatic arch
Mm-hmm.
cheekbones and a little heavy-handed. You know, he's stylizing with it. But here's my criticism because he can never criticize Dick Smith's sculpting or his application. He's just too damn talented. But I didn't feel it matched how David Bowie would age.
Hmm. Yeah, but you're talking about the later stages, because
I'm actually
there's an early
even the
stage.
earlier stages,
Really?
they're inconsistent. They're beautiful,
Have you ever
but they
looked
don't.
at them? Because
Yes, I studied them.
against how David Bowie aged, though, because and I'm going just from like photos, not the movie, but there's one shot of him where he's got glasses and he's like 60 maybe
Yeah,
or
you're
50s
right.
that looks super
It's
like
brilliant. You're right, Chet.
amazing, and it's
I can't argue with you. It's brilliant, and I've seen it, and I've seen it compared. But he changes the whole stylization of the neck waddle,
mm.
and that one, it's really spaced far apart. And then,
This is
and
like super nerd talk.
I
Okay,
know, but I've
people.
got
I know.
I
I'm
got to get
glad.
it out of my
I'm glad. I
system.
just think it's amazing. It's
I
like
know, I've got to
there's
get it out
people
of my
that think about
system.
this stuff.
Yeah,
That's us.
there's some continuity problems with those makeups, but they're still beautiful. But I was surprised even with that, and I felt like it wasn't to me that little big man makeup was like a pinnacle, and so yeah, I'm being overly critical, but yeah, okay. Do you want to really hate me?
Okay, go for it.
Okay, Salieri makeup. As beautiful as that makeup is
For Amadeus.
for Amadeus, it did not follow F. Murray Abraham's glabella folds in between his
Well,
brow.
didn't he use his own
He used his
forehead,
own,
a
but that's Dick
cast?
Smith's head,
Right.
and those wrinkles look great. But F. Murray Abraham has a real distinctive crease between his brow,
Wow.
and so it's like it's like that hood. You can't overlook those things because it's a part of the actor's anatomy. And so that final Salieri makeup, that deep crease is obliterated because
Wow. Okay.
Dick Smith's putting his glabella, glabellar or whatever creases on top of F. Murray Abraham. But it works.
Right.
It works
It's. I
because
mean,
Dick,
that's the pinnacle, according to him and a lot of people. His best age makeup. Right.
yes,
Considered his best age makeup.
it's so good that even that flaw, inconsistency of anatomy doesn't matter because he's so good. It's just operating on another level.
Right.
But I have to I want to figure these things out because that's fun.
Yeah.
You know, I want to analyze and break
Yeah.
these things down, and so that's where I picked up. Because you know, when I was doing makeups for like Benjamin Button and stuff, and Mitch would do this. It's like, and I've seen others. You really do have to follow the natural lines of the actor's face
Mm-hmm.
because if you start sculpting anatomy on top of different anatomy on top of an actor's anatomy, there's a clash.
Right.
And so you've got to follow the natural creases and simply exaggerate them.
Right. That's why it's important to have the right actor when you're doing an age makeup. You
Yes.
know, they just
Yes.
don't work as well on certain types of faces. Okay. Anyway, let's stay in the time period.
Okay.
So now we're at the
We're in
late
the late 60s. Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes. John Chambers, he did that big. That was a huge innovation with these, the chin piece and the nose and brow piece as one foam latex piece, right? Um,
Were they one foam latex or did they have
I
the lower mouth was separate. So the
yeah,
lower chin was separate. So he was playing around with multiple pieces. He just didn't figure out a way to break up the sculpture. So he was sculpting these
right.
things separate. So they
I
weren't
thought it was brow and going down to
muzzle, and then
I could be wrong though, but
I think the
the
chin
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 was
was
definitely
separate.
separate because that was the big thing about the corners of the mouth.
Yeah.
There was an issue with the corners of the mouth. Uh, I forget what it was. It's like if um, there was something with the corners of the mouth that didn't work well if you did it in one piece, and I can't
Mm.
really explain it. But overlapping them was fixed the
Was it
problem, and
was it shrinkage?
maybe it was
Or
shrinkage and blending off around the mouth with the makeup. But those were like
oh,
funny because the lips didn't move, and when they were talking, but it's still the designs were really great.
so good.
They
Yeah.
really were great, and you bought it even though the lips weren't moving,
Yeah.
and it sounded like the voices sounded like they're buried beneath a couple inches of foam. It's like there's a little different resonance there, but they were designed so well. Really was someone who had an eye. Just the shapes of the lips and stuff were really well done. It was like a really good kind of mix between human and ape. You know,
Hmm.
and
I think Tom Berman contributed a lot in that design because there's a documentary, excellent documentary on the Planet of the Apes
oh,
makeups.
that's right. Yeah,
And at one point, Tom Berman did a clay design that kind of that kind of pulled it in that direction, away from what John Chambers had done. But so
that's right. Yeah, you're right.
a lot of credit goes to Tom Berman
Yep.
for those as well. And
Yeah, that's
was it,
true. That's true. Tom
yeah,
Berman.
was Vern? Who else was it? Was Werner Kepler? Who else was on that? So John Chambers and was Ken Chase? Oh, anyway, there was a whole talented
Yeah.
crew, but as far as the sculpting and the design, they nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it. It
That
was
was one of the first prosthetics I made when I was a kid. When I finally learned how to do foam latex and got a life
oh
cast, it was a Planet of the Apes type thing. It was just I remember it was so cool. I mean, so much more fun when you're a kid doing it for the first time than ever any other time in the industry. You know, doing it in your mom's oven,
yeah.
pulling out that first piece,
Oh,
painting
oh,
it, gluing it on. It's just like there nothing beat that in the effects business for me. You know, it was so much.
pulling out your first foam latex appliance.
Yeah, talk about
That
exciting.
smell and exciting. Oh, that it worked.
Yeah,
Even, sort of. Mine were really thick, but it worked. It didn't
yeah.
collapse, and it was like, oh, so fun,
So
so beautiful.
yeah. And Planet of the Apes was a huge movie back then. It was
Hmm.
super popular, like mainstream. They had toys. I had a bunch of the little figures, the little toy figures. I had a
Oh,
treehouse. I had the Planet of the Apes treehouse.
oh, I didn't. I was a little too young for that.
Yeah, it was so
Shoot.
cool. It-
They had little action figures.
yeah, yeah. I remember I got one, and in the first day I broke my Dr. Zaius arm off. Like the rubber band came off, it was held by the rubber
Uh-huh.
bands, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. I was so bummed because it was back. I ordered the Treehouse play set, and it came with like two figures, I think, and you had to do mail order. I remember going to the post office with my mom after how many weeks I was waiting, and I got the whole thing, and I was so excited to play, and I broke his arm on the first day, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. And then someone
Oh,
told me recently, it's like, oh yeah, you just take a clothes hanger and you make a little hook, and you can go in and fish the rubber band that holds the arms on, and you could attach it again. And it's like,
do you still have it?
no, I don't have it. I don't
Oh,
have. But they had model kits. They had Aurora model kits, I think, of Planet of the Apes. Unless I'm getting that confused with the caveman models they
okay,
had.
so I wasn't even born yet. So yeah, this was the late 60s. So, but that would have been so cool.
Yeah, it was great. But it was
Uh,
hugely popular uh, in the culture. It was like a big deal, that movie. It was and the makeups were like celebrated in
mhm.
mainstream culture. It was kind of like probably the beginning of seeing a lot of coverage and talk about prosthetic makeups in movies. You
You're
know,
right. You're
it
right.
it was like, yeah, it was
When
considered
it
like
got an
amazing.
Oscar, it had to be acknowledged,
Yeah,
and and that really was. If the makeups didn't work, that movie wouldn't have worked. So,
definitely. Yeah, you know, it's funny.
yeah.
What I always thought was so funny about that, looking at it now, is how they would always, it was like they were trying to act through the makeup, and since they couldn't really do anything down here, they would do this,
Uh-huh.
scrunch their nose together. It's so funny. You could tell, you could see what they're, it was almost like a characteristic of being a monkey person was that you scrunch your nose, just because that's
Yeah,
sort of like all they had to do. That's all they could
I
really do.
like it. Yeah, it was yeah, so cool.
Yeah,
It used to be on TV, and I remember whenever there was a Planet of the Apes on television, it was an event, and I would always watch it. But I wasn't fully, yeah, I was too young to understand and appreciate the makeup technology at the time.
yeah,
But it was just a cool thing to
yeah,
see
yeah,
apes, you
yeah.
know.
Um, so okay, getting into the 70's, we might have to do a two-parter on this one because we're like coming up on 2 hours already. But let's just keep going.
Whatever you think.
Okay. Because yeah, we're just into the 70's. We haven't even got started with the really good stuff. You know what I mean? The 70's and 80's. Come on. Um, so what we had then, the other big in the 70's, we had The Exorcist is probably like the big effects movie of the 70's that was like innovative and crazy. I
Yeah.
can't think of another one like that. I mean, there was a lot of horror movies in the 70's, but I can't think of one that was that uh shocking and mind-blowing. Although, Dawn of the Dead, we're talking about that was
But
also
but
gory
but
and shocking, but
nothing else had the level of quality
right.
that Kevin
Yeah.
Smith could bring
Yeah.
to it.
Right, yeah. Um there was, yeah, and that was full of amazing innovations with the head spinning animatronic. Although it's funny that, the head spin thing,
Uh-huh.
looking back at it now, it looks very stiff, and it's almost like, being picky, being overly critical. You almost wish that it kind of was not so smoothly on a track.
Yeah.
It felt very like the body's stiff, when it's like it would have been, if she had some movement in the arms and
She did
legs.
I think she did have some movement in the arms a little bit, but you didn't
Really?
really see it.
Yeah.
There's a shot when she's on the bed and she turns and says something to the mom, and
But I
see
mean,
what
when it
she did,
completes the
and
turn, it's
yeah, and the arm moves a little bit, and
okay.
but I think you're right. It was a little bit
It's
stiff,
like
but
when it completes the turn, it is kind of like on a servo, and it just kind of goes,
yeah,
you know. But
yeah,
I mean,
I
come on,
agree.
it's still great.
Yeah. See, and that's what I know I'm going to get a lot of people angry at me. We can be critical of these things, but we still love them,
Yeah, yeah,
and respect and admire them.
yeah. We're
But
coming from a good place.
yes.
So yeah, the vomit rig was another crazy innovation
Hmm.
that Dick did. There was uh the help me on the stomach, which is that 111 trifluoroethane, right?
Hmm.
Painted on foam that raised that kind of blistered up the foam, and they shot it in reverse and blew dry it. Painted help me on the stomach, used a blow dryer to evaporate the 111, and filmed it in reverse, right? So it
Hmm.
so it appeared to come, so it went down to where you couldn't see the words anymore, right?
Yep.
And that was like kind of a big thing. I don't think that had been
Hmm.
used in a film before.
Air bladders, the air bladder on the
Air
neck.
bladders, yeah.
I've always heard that Joe Blasco was the one that innovated that.
I
So
heard that
he kind
too.
of was first for a David Cronenberg film, Shivers, I think it was. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, that's
and
right.
but but Dick just used it for that one moment, and it was just expanded, and that was it.
like a
But it
frog.
was,
Yeah, it
but
was
it was
amazing.
freaky.
Yeah.
It was really freaky.
And Joe Blasco, he's more famous for having a makeup school.
Mm.
I think he's more well known for the makeup school because Mitch went to that school. It's like a lot of
Yeah, you're right.
incredible people came out of that school in the
Yeah,
80s.
I remember that was the first time in, reading Fangoria and stuff that there was ever a makeup school. It was a
Hmm.
Joe Blasco makeup school.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He did like a lot of weird movies. He not a lot of huge movies, but he was a guy that, I mean, there was a lot of makeup artists that were doing weird, like throughout the 70s is when there was like more people were doing makeup. There was a lot
Mhm.
of like names that weren't super popular, but like Bill Munns, remember doing like uh uh Swamp Thing, the original Swamp Thing, the really
That was the
bad,
80s. That was the 80s.
terrible stuff.
Yeah.
That was okay. That was okay. So maybe
But
okay. You're right. It was the 80s when you started hearing all kinds of newer effects people. 70s were still like Dick Smith, the Bermans, or uh, uh, John Chambers, Dick Smith,
yeah,
and then Rick started working because Rick worked on The Exorcist. Rick Baker,
yeah.
and he started doing stuff on his own, like with Schlock. He did this movie Schlock and Octoman and It's Alive. Those are all in the 70s.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
But Tom Berman was really busy during that time.
Yeah,
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
that's right.
Uh,
And that's a great one. I just
it's a
watched that
great movie.
recently and it's still, the
Yeah,
effects really still hold up.
great.
Yeah,
Really
really.
great effects. Um, yeah, who else was? I've got a list. I wrote down Stan. When did Stan start? And Robert Schiffer and Stan Schiffer. Uh, he worked at Disney, and Stan was like, I think, his assistant or apprenticing with Robert
Okay.
Schiffer. But who else was there? So Stuart Freeborn was busy in Britain doing some great stuff. Dick Smith, of course, Tom Berman, Rick Baker was coming on the scene. Um, yeah, who
I can't
else?
think of any other. I know there's people yelling at us listening right now,
I
probably.
know our minds are not going to catch everything,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm going to feel bad about because I'll be overlooking
I
people, and
know.
hey,
I but
there's only so much we can do.
I think Stan Winston start in the 80s though with like that one he did that cut off head,
Yeah, that
the
was great.
exterminator or
The
something where
Exterminator, that was really good.
it was like it would come off, it was hinged and you could put it back or something.
What about The Wiz? Was that 70s? Sidney Lumet?
That's a good question. That's a good
Okay, those are
question.
great.
Oh,
Those are great.
heart beeps.
Heart Beeps, that was in 80s because
That
I
was
went
the
up
80s.
against Rick.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So I don't think Stan really came into his own. Oh, well, he did Gargoyles. That might have been
That was the
80s.
set. No, Gargoyles was
70s?
70s.
Okay.
Yeah, and Gargoyles
Yeah.
was amazing. I thought that
Hmm.
I thought that was, and I think that was like the contact lenses were a big part of those makeups being
Yeah.
so. But the designs were great. The designs of the gargoyles were really cool.
Oh, uh, uh, Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic makeups. That was the
that's right.
70s.
Yep. Was that the
And Stan,
70s?
yeah, and Stan and Rick did autobiography of a Miss Jane Pittman,
That's
which was
right.
really innovative, cool stuff. And Rick was young.
Old age makeup on Cicely
Yeah, yeah.
Tyson.
So there was a lot of stuff going on, really.
That's true.
But I thought the Island of Dr. Moreau makeups were just fantastic.
Wait a minute. We're not talking the Stan Winston Island of Dr. Moreau. There's like a
Oh,
70s one with
the
the
70s one with
Bermans.
Michael York that the Bermans and John Chambers worked on, and Mike
Okay. Yeah,
McCracken.
right. Yeah, those were cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mike
those are
McCracken.
really good.
Mike McCracken was one of the
Great sculptors
great
and stuff at
sculptors
the
of
time.
that era.
Yeah, those really work well.
Yeah, those were cool. Those were super cool. I haven't seen that movie probably since the 70s.
Well, and I remember when I was at Spectral and I was kind of doing some designs for the Beast for X-Men 3, I went right back to Island of Dr. Moreau
Mm,
to just kind of study those because that's kind of what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And those sculptures and designs are just great.
Yeah.
There's subtle ones, and then there's the really I I think they're yeah, more elaborate and successful. Well, of course, they're later than the Planet of the Apes makeups, but as far as like bestial,
Yeah.
fantastic, fantastic.
Oh. Oh, that was probably the 80s. Wasn't there like that reminded me there was a Stan Winston who did a TV show, Beast something. There was a guy that transformed into these different animals.
Manimal.
Manimal.
Yeah. With Simon McCorkindale.
That's got to be 80s, right?
That was 80s. I remember watching it because it was during the
83.
transformation period. Yeah.
1983. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver was
oh,
another great makeup movie because with
yeah.
the blood effects, the fingers getting blown off, and the bald the mohawk was a bald cap Dick Smith
And it
did,
looks so good.
which
I've watched Taxi Driver recently, and it looks so good.
yeah, it's like I couldn't believe that was a bald cap when I first learned that. I just thought he shaved his head.
Dick Smith does really good gore.
Yeah.
Godfather,
Oh,
uh,
Godfather. Yeah, right.
yeah, but Taxi Driver. There's a weird shot where I think, okay, Taxi Driver was after Godfather. When he goes, Travis Bickle goes, loses it at the end and starts killing people. I think even Dick employed one of the bullet hits to the face,
Yeah.
where he pulls a little appliance on top of a hole away,
Yeah.
like he did for Jimmy Caan and Godfather. But
Right.
it has a weird, but I think they shot it in slow motion, and it had a really weird quality, but it worked. And then that stylized violence. That whole scene, if you haven't seen it in a while, was really weird. That end sequence where he goes crazy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some slow motion moments, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just some really uh just abrupt violence and innovative violence.
Yeah. And you know that another innovation Dick did is blood. He came
Mm,
up with I think he came up with that blood formula that everybody
yeah.
used, you know. And the blood in Taxi Driver was kind of darker
Uh-huh.
than it had been in because a lot of the movies from the 60s they used like stage blood and it looked bright,
Look bad.
you know,
Mhm.
really bright. I'm thinking
Little Big Man. There's the
oh,
blood looked terrible in that.
really? I know
Yeah.
what's Silent Running with Bruce Dern?
Um, yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, that's such a cool movie. That's one if people haven't seen it, it's great. It's great. Man, you feel bad for those little robots. Like
I
you
know.
just feel like they're so sympathetic, those little robots.
They are. They are. Was there blood in that?
There was I think he got unless I'm confusing it with another film, I think he got cut in the leg and he ties a tourniquet on his
Oh, that's
leg
right.
and the
Yes. And
blood is
the robots help do the
right.
surgery on him.
Right,
That's right.
right. And I think, and that had that kind of fake, bright looking blood. But Dick
Mhm.
came up with a really good, simple blood formula. He also did that. We should talk about. He did that makeup book for kids, which
Mhm.
started off a lot of effects people.
I
Uh,
never had. Wait,
I
I
did.
got it later.
Yeah, I didn't get it until later either. Um,
Is this it?
yeah, yeah. That's the
The reissue.
reissue. Um, but that was great because it was like how to do makeups, uh, you know, with mortician's wax, but also with stuff around the house, you know, for kids. It was made, I think in the 60s, he did that.
Oh wow.
I think the late 60s. And I didn't get it until I was already I think I already had the Tom Savini book at that point. Um, yeah. So you think we should stop and do it and
Yeah, let's do. And
because
then we
I don't
could
want
be
to
all.
rush through like the
Yeah,
best
the
part of
80s.
it.
We can't rush through the
You
80s.
can't rush through the 80s because like the 80s and the 90s is when all the real kind of changes. 80s to 2000, early 2000s probably had massive changes into like now foam latex prosthetics. Nobody does that. It's like it's all silicone prosthetics and all that stuff was kind of being developed in the early 2000s when we were at Rick's,
Yeah.
you
You know
know?
what I know what we can end on, Chet?
Hmm.
Because it takes place in the 70s.
Okay.
Okay, and this this Eraserhead,
Oh, yes,
a
Eraserhead.
precursor to something magical that happened with the makeup on the Elephant Man. So
Elephant
here's
Man
my
was the 80s.
80s,
Okay.
but Eraserhead was the 70s,
Right.
late 70s. And okay, what I want to do right now on this podcast is put a definitive stamp on how the Eraserhead baby was made.
You definitive? You're that sure?
Sort of.
Yeah, because
But
there was
I'm gonna be confident here and
okay.
cocky, and I'm gonna put it
So
down.
you got to give the history because nobody there. David Lynch has never. He did all the stuff himself. I think he's
He
never
did.
said how it was made. There's rumors that it was a baby cow fetus and all this other weird stuff, but he's never said how it was done. So,
Yes. So okay, so brief history of Eraserhead. It took him 5 years to make.
mm,
He lived within the horse stables on the grounds of the Film Institute right there in Hollywood.
hmm
So these old stables weren't being occupied, so that's where he constructed his sets and his workshops, and he even lived in the bedroom set, from the movie.
hmm
Okay. So the question is, okay, and David Lynch is a brilliant genius kind of artist. He's incredibly resourceful. He did all the stuff himself, and I'm going to refer to my notes real
yeah,
quick.
he's very hands
So,
on.
yeah, he made not only did he make the baby or whatever, he made a fake head of Jack Nance. He did the radiator lady makeup. He made the new tiny chickens. They're new. And the squishy fetuses, the large floating baby heads, Jack Fisk's makeup, and the guy at the beginning that controls it all,
Mm.
and then the baby. And then he built all the sets. And I think he made the eraser pencil making machine,
Oh
and then he
wow.
made the planet. So we're talking about someone who knows how to build things.
Yeah.
He's just amazing. Okay, so the baby could go two different directions. It could be he manipulated real flesh, and that's what you see on screen, or he cast a dead fetus of some sort that he found. He said he found it on the lot of the stables, which tells me
Hmm.
I don't think they had horse. I think they only had horses because this is Hollywood. I mean, are they really going to have cows and goats and stuff? Maybe, but these are stables. This is Hollywood. They want to use, there's something glamorous about horses. So that tells me he found a horse fetus. So
Have you looked at a horse fetus?
no,
I haven't
because
either.
I don't even want to. That's the problem. I don't want to see what comes up on a Google search.
I'll look up a horse fetus. Go ahead.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. And so, uh, I mean, I think because he already proven he knows how to make molds. He
True.
took a cast of Jack Nance's
hmm
head and he did all this other stuff. So it stands to reason that he knew once he found this fetus that he could make a mold of it. And so then it's just a head and neck. That's all it is.
Hmm.
So then it's a matter of okay, if he didn't use the real flesh and keep it in a refrigerator, that's kind of impractical because if it was a real flesh, the lights, the time,
Yeah,
the
I don't
duration,
think that's possible.
it
I
wouldn't
don't think
stand
it's
up. It
not,
would
especially on
decay.
a low budget film like that.
Yes. And he's kind of a stream of consciousness filmmaker, so he's not storyboarding everything to where he knows exactly what he needs of the effects. So he had to have taken a cast of a fetus, and I'm going to say it's a horse fetus. He either cast the skin out of latex, raw latex, or hot melt vinyl. Because when you watch the movie, it has a kind of translucent
Yeah,
glow.
yeah. It's hard
And
to tell
so,
if that is coming from the glossiness though.
yeah, because he sprays it with something like
Yeah.
a sealer of some sorts. And so, and it's black and white, so he may not even have painted it. And so I think it could have, I I'm just going to say it's probably hot melt vinyl,
Mm-hmm.
maybe latex, because you know the face hugger in Alien was just raw latex and it
Mm.
had an organic
Oh
quality
wow,
to it.
yeah.
So either hot melt vinyl or latex, and then he mechanized it, and that's what's interesting. Can you imagine seeing the little animatronic before the skin's on it of the baby? How cool that would be!
Yeah, right.
And so I think he has a rod going underneath the back of the head. The mold was probably a one-piece mold because you don't see any seams on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the back of the head is probably where the opening was, and that's where he sticks the 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 rod to move it. Because when you look at it in the movie, it's the rod is the head is making the movements, and the neck's just kind of flopping around. It's
Mm-hmm.
not there's nothing coming from the neck. So, and if you look at the baby in the movie, he used whatever material that he used, he applied roughly as buildup around the eyes, and so he kind of from scratch made the eyelids. Because if you look at
Yeah,
the
that's
baby, there's an inconsistency. You can see where
yeah.
something was molded,
It
and then you can
looks
see where he applied it on top,
yeah, it looks like there's patching on the eyelids.
patching, and so that could have very well have been latex.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to do that on hot melt in that way. You know what I
Well, could you?
mean?
And that's what I wanted to ask you. I've never used hot melt. Could
Hot
you?
melt, nothing sticks to it. It's terrible. It's like the
Oh,
stuff that those bait worms are made out of.
uh-huh.
Fishing.
So you can't melt some and then add it to
Oh yeah, you could melt. That's true. You could melt it and add it, and
so
he could have done that. He
he
could have
could have
done
done
that.
that because also when the baby's sick, there's all these little like growths, these like
Yeah,
bumps on
yeah.
it. So he
Mm-hmm.
got something to stick to it.
Mm-hmm. True.
So again, I can't say for sure whether it's hot melt vinyl or latex, but it was one probably something like that. Okay, I'm referring to my notes real quick.
Okay.
And okay, let's see the theme. So I'm gonna go with it was a horse fetus he cast, and then he derived the final baby from that via traditional makeup effects and animatronic methods. What a genius David Lynch is. He's an effects guy a- and a director. He's almost like he could have been a great makeup effects guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is what I'm leading to for the Elephant Man. He Eraserhead was incredibly successful. The baby just worked. It
Mm-hmm.
looks organic. And everyone from Spielberg to Kubrick, everyone wants to know how he made the baby. And it's because it's so damn convincing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he's kind of like Dick Smith, where after Little Man, he goes, Man, that I really accomplished something with that. He may have become a little bit overly confident because he wanted to do the Elephant Man makeup himself. So he was going to
Right.
transfer some of the uh, what he learned on Eraserhead onto Elephant Man. And so Mel Brooks let him do a test.
Right.
And I think he used real latex, not foam latex or build it up or vinyl or
Right.
whatever material he used for that baby. He used on the Elephant Man test makeup on John Hurt,
Right.
and it didn't work.
I wish I could see those pictures.
Oh, I know. No, so it didn't work. He was devastated. Um, Popped his hubris, and then they had to go to Chris Tucker. It was meant to be because Chris Tucker designed one of, I think, the best makeups ever.
Yeah.
And it all is kind of concludes, it's part of the end of a trajectory that Eraserhead started.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
Eraserhead, cast from a horse fetus, cast from a translucent material, mechanized and created by David Lynch. That's how the baby was made.
Okay. I just looked up horse fetuses,
Oh,
and
okay.
there is a stage of a horse fetus that looks a lot like the Eraserhead baby, but it's like 4 inches tall, 4 inches long. The the older it gets, the more the snout goes out. And the snout
Yeah.
is pretty pushed in. I looked up cow fetuses, and it kind of looks like a cow fetus, but it depends on the, like these are cow fetuses.
Could be. I'm thinking it's.
Look,
I
look,
wonder
look,
if there's
look,
a
look.
goat fetus. Yeah, kind of,
Kind
kind
of.
of.
Even the cow though has. It's the snout that's throwing me off from thinking it's not
I think it's a
a
horse.
horse. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to show you the horse one because I don't want you to get disturbed.
Okay. Yeah. I don't. You just tell me what
It's
you
not
think.
that bad, but it's the horse. Okay, here's one that's like a computer. Well, maybe you're right. Check this out.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think it's
But this is
a
small though.
horse.
This is it's like the bigger the fetus, the horse fetus gets, the
The
more
longer than
the snout. Like
yes.
look at you know, look at how long the snout is on that one.
Yeah, I think it was a miscarriage,
Oh,
and
maybe it was a deformed horse.
yeah, it was
Hmm.
a miscarriage at the earlier stage to where the snout hadn't come out. And I think he saw it, and being the resourceful artist he is, he knew that was going to be the baby, and he was able to design the whole movie. Yeah. Oh
Oh, I'm gonna have to
God.
blur that out. I shouldn't have done
Yeah.
that.
I think that's developed further than what I think he found.
Hmm.
And plus, it's relatively big. It's kind of like the size of an apple or something, the
Right.
the
Yeah.
head. So I think so it
That's
had to belong to something big. So I'm going to say it's a horse fetus.
okay. He could have sculpted it too, though.
No, because he said it was born in the stables nearby.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's the most information he's ever,
Oh, I thought that was a rumor.
or he said something like it came from the stables. So that's the most information he's ever
Ah,
said. He's
okay.
told he's told Alec and Tom from ADI stuff because he was going to have them do some effects. And he hinted that he wanted to manipulate real flesh. He's not squeamish. He does a lot of weird
Apparently,
stuff with
yeah.
flesh, and I don't get that, but he's able to do it. But for me, it was always, well, is it a real horse fetus or is it cast from one? And I
Yeah.
think I'm going to say it's cast from one.
It can't be real. I think the things that give it away to me is it couldn't be done because the skin would rot. There's no way. There's no way. You
Hmm.
know how hot lights are on set.
Yep.
This is in the 70's. On top of that, that did they? I don't even know if they had. Let's assume they had a freezer or refrigerator. Rot would happen even over the
Yeah.
course of a day. It would stink. It would change. You wouldn't be able to have any
Uh-huh.
continuity.
Yep.
But the other thing is the eyes. The eyes are definitely added on.
Hmm.
You can see they're patched.
Patched. Yep.
So yeah,
You can't do that to real flesh. You're
right.
right.
Yeah, you
So
could.
I think we just determined right now that it was not real flesh.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible because also the
Uh,
eyes are. There's eye mechs in there. The eyes move.
yeah. And when it's sick and spitting up and spits
Yeah,
out skunk, so yeah, okay.
imagine trying to rig a stinking, rotting fetus with. I just don't
But
see it. I just don't see it being
I don't
possible.
either, but if someone could pull it off, it's David Lynch.
But I mean, just getting because you'd have to remove a lot of the insides. It would change the shape, and that's a
You're right,
pretty
Chet.
smooth shape.
Yep. I think you've just helped me kind of solidify that that's how it was. I think that's how it was done.
So
Cast.
he probably molded it and then just cast it in that material
Yep.
directly. He probably
Yep.
didn't do a clay pour or anything. I don't imagine. It's
No.
probably and then just kind of like doctored it up.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's a good ending of the 70's. It's not, you don't think about Eraserhead when you think about makeup effects so much, but it is kind of important in the.
It's important. And even lady in the radiator, that makeup is really effective.
Yeah. I
It's
wonder how he
creepy.
did that. It was
I
really
I think it
weird.
was the old-fashioned build-up. I think he did it like Jack Pierce,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then just build it up. And
It's pretty smooth
yeah,
for a build up though. It's pretty smooth. It's really strange. Yeah. I
he
thought
might have done some latex, just like brush-in latex
right.
appliances that he put
Yeah.
on. So that could have been.
Yeah.
Again, being black and white,
Yeah.
it's able to disguise a lot of it,
True.
which, yeah. And then the Jack Fisk makeup, um, that's definitely a build-up
Yeah.
makeup
Hmm.
because he even, I think, suffered some scarring or something
Oh,
from it.
wow.
It was hard on his skin.
Wow.
So I think Lynch was using collodion or whatever. But yeah, and the only thing I'm really kind of not sure about are the little baby fetuses that squishy that he pulls
Oh,
out and
yeah.
steps on. Those might have just, I'm not sure what those were.
Yeah.
I
Those
don't
could have
really
been
want to
built up.
know.
They could have
Those,
been built up, though.
or
Like,
they could have been real. He could have gone to some kind of, I don't want to think about that, but
I'd have to look at
yeah,
it. I'd have to look at it because I
yeah.
remember them. I haven't seen the movie in a while. I really, the, the baby, I used to watch it all the time when I was a teenager. I love that movie.
Hmm.
But as an adult, especially after you have kids, it's hard to watch. The baby stuff is so extra disturbing because especially when it's sick and it's just crying all the time. And as a parent, you have this, or
I bet.
you have an automatic, when you hear a baby cry, you just feel like you get this angst, like it
Mhm.
triggers something in your brain, like you have to go and help this baby. I'm sure it's like that, just a human thing, but having
That's a good point.
raised
Yeah.
babies, hearing that, like when I hear a baby cry, I'm just out in public. I automatically feel bad for it. And I wonder if it's okay. It's weird. It's like
Yeah.
an animal thing almost. But I haven't watched the movie in a long time because it's so disturbing because the baby, because I feel so bad for that baby and it's so
Interesting.
effective. But,
It is.
I was able to deal with that stuff better when I was a kid, I think, when I was younger. But it's like that with all kinds of stuff. Like I can't watch certain things. They just bother me too much now.
I hear you.
Like I'm gotten
Yeah.
more sensitive in a way. But
Yeah.
I remember those things, they're like giant sperm worm things almost,
Hmm.
right? And she's stepping on them.
Yeah.
I remember them looking very rubbery. So it makes me think, like I said, I have to watch again. To me, they looked rubbery. So
But
I,
they almost look hot melt vinyl-y.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm wondering if
But they
he,
don't, fleshy things have a weight to them, and rubbery things don't have the same kind of weight.
yeah,
And so I don't remember, like fleshy things like that are almost like a little heavier and kind of fatty, and they more jiggle in a different way, whereas rubber is a
okay.
little more bouncy, if that makes sense. And I haven't checked it, but I remember I have a sense of those things being very rubbery looking. So I'm wondering if they were like, because they could have easily been uh, cushion foam cut and latex and paper towel or something. You know what I mean?
They
But I haven't seen them in
possibly
years. So
the
so
the the little umbilical tail or whatever has a real natural quality to
mm,
it, like it wasn't sculpted. So
really,
I'm wondering, I
I,
don't know. That's what's so amazing about the movie is it really starts all these questions. But as I think what you said makes a lot of sense. So let's go with whatever material he made the baby out of, he transferred to make these the little fetus things. But I don't know.
uh,
I'm almost thinking they're real.
okay. I might
I'm
have
gonna
to
go with
watch the
real.
movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with real, but the baby's fake. And
Yeah,
I think he might have gone somewhere where he could have access to them. I
yeah.
don't.
Could be.
It's an amazing movie for it to be so mysterious.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. It's kind of perfect, really. It's like a
Yeah,
spiritual thing. Um,
totally.
okay, so let's let's wrap this up, and then we'll do a part two.
Okay, sounds
I'll talk to you after we stop recording to figure out what day we want to do it,
okay. Sounds good.
because we're at like almost 2.5 hours, and we haven't even
Okay.
gotten to the 80s, and we
Yeah,
got
this is a perfect time to stop, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. I mean, the 80s is when it starts getting good. I think, like really, the most to talk about, I think, is the 80s.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, we don't want to skimp on that.
Yeah,
So,
no, you don't want to go into
okay.
that like fatigued or anything. So anyway, okay. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you Ryan for talking to me, and just say goodbye to everybody. And
Okay.
then
Goodbye, everybody.
goodbye everybody. We'll be
Thanks,
back.
Chet.
Yeah, thanks Ryan. We'll be back on part two.